Hello, Kate, can you tell me? I can't tell who is on the meeting if we have enough. Do we have quorum?
No, we do not yet.
Okay. I don't know why, but I can only see like 5 people ever, so I can never tell who's on these. It does look like we have a quorum now. I see Steve Roundtree has joined us. Can you confirm that, Kate?
Hold on 1 second. I'm trying. There's some people getting in right now, so I'm just trying to count here. So we have Andrew, we have Barb, we have Danielle, Rhea, Ron, and Steve.
Okay. Then let's call the meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. And can you do a roll call, please?
Yes. Steve Carreau, Rhea Ortner,
Here.
Barb Hart,
Here.
Andrew Duarte,
Here.
Ron Mitchell,
Here.
Danielle Kraus,
Here.
Steve Roundtree,
Here.
Catherine Vallon, Jonathan Baumhover.
Catherine didn't have a link, so I have just sent that to her.
She jumped on. It's Miranda.
Perfect.
Catherine, can you hear us?
Yes, I see her
Yes,
now. Okay.
Yeah, I found an old link to one of the old meetings.
Perfect.
Catherine Vallon, and I don't think Steve has jumped in.
Or Jonathan?
Or Jonathan, no.
Okay.
Not seeing either of them, so, but okay.
Okay. Let's start with, are there any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Hearing none. I ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Great. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right.
Thank you. And we still need a roll call on that one?
Yes. Steve Carreau. Still not with him. Rhea Ortner.
Yes.
Barb Hart.
Yes.
Andrew Duarte.
Yes.
Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Catherine Vallon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Do we have any public comment on non-agenda items? No. I'm not hearing or seeing any, so we will move on to the next agenda item. I believe we're going to move the agenda around just slightly to put the ADA presentation in here because some of the folks can't be here later. And it looks like that is going to be, sorry, later on my list. Is that Miranda or Macy?
Miranda, yeah, sorry, I have to use Macy in order to start the meeting. So it'll be myself, Nikki Dunn, and Ari Goodman who will present. And I am sorry, I have some like laryngitis going on, so you'll have to bear with my like whisper yell. I think so what we'll do, Barb, is we'll start with Ari, go to Nikki, and then I will wrap it up. So Ari, go ahead.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Hey, everybody. My name's Ari Goodman from the Center for People with Disabilities. I'm the Rural Independent Living Advisor up here. So that's a very fancy way of saying I'm the mountain human for CPWD in this area. I span from the areas kind of in the jurisdiction of Central City all the way through up until about, I'd say, Allen's Park. So that's kind of where I'm at. But of course, with COVID-19, jurisdiction went a little out the window. We help everybody a little bit everywhere. So I want to get you familiar with what I do and what we do up here and a little bit more about the ADA. So thank you so much for your attention and your time. Thank you, Miranda. All right, so at CPWD, our mission is to provide resources, information, advocacy, assistance with people who have disabilities and overcoming them, or working with them to knock down barriers in order to have people have independent living and independent living skills, meaning people who are wanting to live on their own, or, you know, even if it is with people in their own household, at least it's a sliding kind of scale of what people can do to empower themselves to live more independently, whatever that means for them. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, in the ADA, don't worry, we'll get into the definition a little bit, but here's just a little bit of overview. The Americans Disability Act also makes it unlawful to discriminate against a person based on that person's association with a person with a disability. So discrimination of any person who has a disability is just completely unlawful, just to put that base right on the front burner for you all. All right, thanks. Next slide. Okay, so let's get more into the definition. What is the Americans Disability Act? What does that mean? So what does the ADA consider as a disability? So it defines a person with a disability as someone who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. This can be from transportation to, being your own payee per se, being able to live alone, being able to, maintain a 40-hour working week or part-time, whatever that may be. Number 2 is this includes people who have a record of such as an impairment, even if they do not currently have a disability. Okay, and then also following that, number 3 includes individuals who do not have a disability but are regarded as having one. So the best way of putting that is, even if it's not, let's say in the DSM-5, if it's not something that is legally bound, known as a as a disability by definition in medical terms, that doesn't mean it's not, it shouldn't be given that kind of validation that it is one. So these can be mentally, physically, emotionally, cognitive, So it really does span. It's more of an umbrella now, and it's more broad, and that should be addressed and given respect in that right. So thank you. We'll keep it kind of powering through here. Let me know if you guys have any questions. We think we have a Q&A at the end. Thank you, Miranda. And who has a disability? Now, stick with me here because it's going to tie into more of our demographic, and I'll get to that point next. So who has one? 61 million adults in the US are living with one. All right, so that's 26%. So 1 in 4 adults in the United States have some sort of disability. Like we said, that umbrella term, mental, physical, cognitive, emotional, it's within that scope. So disability is especially common in these groups of older adults, women, and minorities. Okay, so 2 in 5 age 65 years or older have one. 2 in 5. All right. Think of the mountains when you're hearing that sentence right there. 1 in 4 are women that have a disability in this classification, and 2 in 5 are non-Hispanic, American Indians, Alaska Native, have a disability. So our indigenous tribes, those should definitely be addressed and should be given that kind of attention as well, to be in that statistic of how crucial it is. Thank you. Next slide. All right, so what do I do up here? What does that all mean with me and what I do? So I up here have been doing peer support groups since I first started up here about 2.5 years ago. Started out within the transient population that we had, the homeless population camping out in the mountains. It would take place after Socks and Sandwiches, which was held up here by Claudia and Hanson at the Presbyterian Church. You're probably familiar. And peer support groups are a container and a space for peers that have disabilities, leading the group about having a disability and how to overcome it. That can be either camaraderie, being able to be there for one another and support each other, or to give resources and ideas for people to bounce things off of. So that was pretty substantial up here until COVID and things started going more online. Nonetheless, we do peer support groups still constantly, and I do them as well up here. Information and referrals to other human services and agencies up here in the Peak to Peak region. For example, if I know of something that's going to be really beneficial for someone and I need to get that to them, if it's something within Gilpin and I need like Gilpin Human Services, Senior Services, or Public Health, I can always try to give that referral and that resource to another person in order to tap into that. And that might also be things in the flatlands around Boulder and whatnot. If there's something that people can tap into that's more beneficial for them, we can do that. So a lot of information that gets passed around, things from my agency, other agencies, medical, it goes from A to Z really. A lot of things happening up here are Social Security insurance and Social Security disability, that people need help with those applications now more than ever. It's been very pressing. I'm getting more and more by the day, as well as my coworkers, for people helping them learn and navigate that system. It's not a very forgiving system, and it's very tedious. So we're trying to help people understand how to apply to feel supported. So we spend time doing that. I also do, like I said, resources and referrals for things such as home modifications. So things like side railings needing to be installed, people who are needing wheelchair ramps installed, grab bars, modified showers, using Alexa devices for 911 emergencies or calls for voice operations. And then I do a lot of other things like mental health referrals to agencies over to Boulder, as well as the Peak to Peak region. Mental health partners is a big one, but also sometimes they're not all encompassing and they just need someone to help them research mental health specifically and where to tap into those and how. So I do a little bit of that. We're a jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. Thank you. Next slide. Thanks for sticking with me, guys. Appreciate that. And then here's just a how to contact us page. We have a lot of different little spots you can access in. Thanks. It's been a long day. Okay, so we have a Boulder office, we have a Longmont office, we have a North Metro, and then we have some satellite locations, such as me up here. There's one in Westminster and Broomfield. Of course, you guys can always give me a call. I can even shoot my number in the chat over here for my work and my work email. And if you ever want to refer someone, again, under that umbrella to me, they do not need a doctor's note. They do not need something to state they have a disability. Pretty much if you tell me that you have a disability that you feel resides with you, I will believe you at face value and work with you. That's no issue whatsoever. I'm not going to ask you for any more information regarding that. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, as we all do at CPWD, and have others feel empowered. So if you have anybody who needs a referral or even just some information, please feel free to access me. I'm up here 5 days a week and then some, right? I live up here, so you're not going to be putting me out too terribly, I promise. And thank you so much. Thank you. All right, one more. ADA compliance in Nederland, but again, I'm going to put my my phone number and email in there, promise. Is this where you are tapping in, Miss Nikki? Is this you?
This is me, yes, this is me.
Okay, you guys deal and have wonderful, wonderful Nikki. I know I love hearing from her. Thanks, girl.
All right, for you people that don't know me, my name is Nikki Dunn. I have been with our town public works for 7 years now. I am the Parks Department lead. The last 20 years for Nederland, we've seen us try and upgrade some of our Nederland ADA compliance. It started really with the sidewalks. That was a big one for us, starting to put in those sidewalks. You'll see Nederland sidewalks on this page, and you'll see it again on the next page. There's reasons for that. Our sidewalks are nice and wide and paved. We have problems with where the sidewalk meets the highway, crosswalks. We're working on some grants in that area that should be completed this year or next year. You can see where when CDOT doesn't overlay, they need to make sure that they are actually making sure that those crosswalks stay in compliance with the lip of them. Sometimes those lips in some intersections are 4 to 5 inches large, with a slope that goes across the street that it's unfriendly for able-bodied people, let alone disabled people. One of my favorite and proudest achievements with the town of Nederland was a 2017 grant that we received to improve access to Chapita Park. I was watching kids and seniors and families coming in. We have many groups that come up from the city that are from, group homes or senior living, those types of things. They were coming to Chapita and weren't even able to get out of the parking lot. And that really broke my heart. There is no reason for anyone to be sad at a playground. So I, along with others, wrote and achieved this grant to improve accessibility into Chapita. And when we did that, we also tore down the old kids fishing dock and put in a new fishing dock that is ADA compliant with the railings bumped down so that a wheelchair could wheel straight up to that dock edge and fish straight off the dock. And in fact, we saw that this past summer when the Ned PD and Colorado Parks and Wildlife put on a fishing derby. We had a little boy show up in his little wheelchair, and we had another little boy show up with the arm crutches, and they were able to fish all around the trail and off the dock. And it was really awesome for me to see everyone at the park that day absolutely smiling and having a great time. The hard packed trails along the south side of the creek was part of that grant as well. We widened, we moved some of the willows out of the way. We improved the accessibility in that point. With the hard packed trails, we do up here face the challenge of snow, rain, those kinds of things, making those hard packed trails not so hard packed anymore, which does not, that doesn't fit with the ADA, but we're doing our best. And that, what I just said, we're doing our best. As long as we keep doing and we're doing our best, that's very important. When I first started with the town, the visitor center bathrooms were, they had stalls in them, and there was one designated female and one designated male bathroom with a stall in each bathroom. Wheelchair wasn't able to get into the bathroom, let alone into the stall. So right away, immediately, I removed the stalls out of those bathrooms and made each bathroom a single-use bathroom. Then last year with the COVID thing, we were actually able to shut down those bathrooms for a while, and each bathroom is now a unisex bathroom, a single-use or single-person type of bathroom that is 100% accessible. The sinks are roll-up. You can roll up underneath the sink if you need to. We have grab bars. We have, you can get into the bathroom with the lip that's there. They're very friendly bathrooms. The doors are great for people whose hands or arms or might not work, you know, the way 100% anyway. So those doors, everything is touch free. You can, they're really friendly and accessible, and I keep them really clean. If you haven't seen them, I encourage you to peek your head in sometime. You can see what an accessible bathroom looks like. Access to town hall was improved. In 2018, there used to be railroad ties around the front yard of town hall with a grass lawn. In order to improve the access into town hall, we took out those railroad ties and put in the crusher fine yard area. So now a wheelchair could actually roll up to town hall. Getting into town hall is a little bit more tricky, but we are so friendly and our staff is amazing. If someone needed to speak with someone or have a private meeting with someone, we can then move up to the community center, which now has an access ramp. So the chair could wheel directly into the upper level of the community center. And we'll move a meeting. If we need to move a meeting, we'll move a meeting. We will never deny someone access because town hall's access is not great. Peter, our town administrative assistant, actually improved our website recently, made it reader friendly. And one of the big things that we did, one of the very first things that we did with our website several years ago, was we put a link to me on that website so that if someone has a problem with accessibility in any way, shape, or form in the town of Netherlands, they can get a hold of me and I can point them to the right resource. If that's Ari, great. And that's Ari and I have a wonderful working relationship. We've been working together for a couple years now, I think. And if it's not longer, I'm not sure, time starts to blend together. The community center programming has really improved for seniors as well. They can get pedicures in there. They can have lunch. They do pickleball. They have games, and it's not just it's not just the lunch anymore. There's a lot more there that they can do and access in the community center. So that programming part of it is important. We don't want people to feel like they're isolated. That can lead to a whole another slew of problems with your mental well-being. So that was a really important piece to get the community center open and running and accessible for not just to the building, but also to the programs. The Tungsten Village and the library are two of our newer buildings in town that are 100% ADA compliant. Tungsten Village, every single apartment in that building is set up for ADA. And the nice thing about that is that if you make it accessible for someone in a wheelchair, it's not just accessible for the wheelchair, it's accessible for everyone. If if you're making it, say you're putting in one stair, well, okay, now you've isolated a group. The goal with the ADA is that no group is isolated. So I encourage you, if you have a chance, if you haven't already been to our library, poke your head in the Tungsten Village if you get a shot at it, and look and see how they've got their elevators, they've got nice wide high hallways. If you ever get a chance to look into one of their apartments, they're actually, the counters and cabinets and all of those things are put at an appropriate height so that people can reach in and grab things without any kind of problems or issues. So those were two things that Nederland should be very proud of as far as creating these awesome accessible spaces. Thanks, Miranda. Can we go to the next slide? So these are some things, areas of improvement. I have sidewalks on this list again because of the problems that we're having with CDOT, getting them to actually come down and grind down some of the asphalt so that those crosswalks and access points aren't, there's no lip on those. We don't, the lips that we have currently are inappropriate. The slope of the roads has it's not just the slope of the sidewalk, it's the slope of the road that you're crossing. And so specifically at 119 in Tilden, you'll see the slope of the road is so unfriendly that unless someone's very confident, they could easily tip over going across that crosswalk. And I've seen people on skateboards and other things wipe out in those areas, and it's not something that Nederland should be proud of at all. One of my future goals for Chipeta Park is playground equipment. I would love to see a piece of playground equipment that goes in somewhere around in the playground area where it's accessible to all. There are not just pieces of playground equipment, there are also pieces of exercise equipment, other musical instrument type equipment that is, it's accessible. It's everyone can play and on those things, and that is a goal of mine. One of the improvements that I really am excited to try and implement at Chipeta Park. And another problem that we are suffering with in Nederland is a lack of focus on ensuring that the ADA is evaluated during land use reviews and things like that. We're planning things without including everyone. And at this phase in our game, we should be planning things that are all inclusive. And that is part of why we are here today. And I appreciate that you all can listen to me. And I'll turn it over to Miranda now.
Thanks, Nikki. So when it comes to ADA compliance, we were really trying to think through what are some opportunities for town and things that we can pursue. As Nikki just alluded to, the first is really drafting an ordinance that integrates ADA evaluating criteria into SRU and PUD reviews. While of course, building code will always have the ADA compliance, perhaps it's an opportunity to really look above and beyond just those standard building code opportunities and see if there are other ways in which we can ensure accessibility to these new developments. We also really need to prioritize continuing to pursue funding to develop and upgrade sidewalks throughout town. And one example was revitalizing Main Streets. That is a grant that Chris applied for the Central Business District, but unfortunately we weren't awarded. So if it would be ideal if we could then continue to apply for similar grants or look for other opportunities where we have funding available to do sidewalk upgrades. Currently, we're in the process, of course, of the Transportation Improvement Project and Safer Main Streets. And so our focus is on ensuring that we execute those, since both provide an opportunity to improve sidewalk accessibility near and around the R2E Park and Ride. We do want to add a business. Obviously, we're with the NDDA here. So from a business standpoint, we do feel that there's some benefit in our town team working to educate businesses on the benefits of being ADA compliant. Of course, there's a requirement when making any major change to a building, but perhaps there's just a fiscal, social, and community development side that maybe people want to, aside from pulling a building permit to do the upgrade. Perhaps there are just small ways in which someone could make a change to their building. Obviously, there is a financial component to doing so. So we would like to do some research into funding opportunities that businesses could apply for ADA compliance. I think oftentimes when we think about ADA compliance, people maybe aren't looking at, by failing to be ADA compliant and not having the ability for someone to access, say, a shop, it is the money that businesses are losing. And so if there was a way in which funding could help them become ADA compliant, perhaps you could then see that in the form of revenue, because more people could come shop in that location because it is accessible. As Nikki shared, we're also looking at ADA playground equipment grants. And we are actively in the process of hiring a parks manager. And that parks manager, a part of their job is to do recreational programming. So it'll be important that when they do so, they're focused on ensuring that there's ADA supports or ADA opportunities within that recreational programming. And last but not least, it's just the comprehensive plan as we go to seek funding to do our update either this year or next year. We do feel it would be important to have a written commitment in that document that as a full community, we are going to strive to be as ADA compliant as we possibly can, and that we'll make every effort to move towards that. So those are just some beginning solutions we have, but tonight what we're really asking of you is the DDA in support of town continuing to work on ADA compliance and ADA funding opportunities? And if, say, we were able to find a grant to upgrade sidewalks or playground equipment, if the DDA would consider allowing us to bring that back for some grant funding or some matching funding for those opportunities. So are there questions for our team?
Thank you, Miranda. I don't have any questions. I assume this is kind of just a presentation of information, and if it comes back, then we would discuss more. Any ideas about funding would be down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're just hoping to open that door that we could come back and seek matching funding. And then, of course, we'd love if there are other areas of ADA focus you want us to look into, just to share that with us now as we're doing some of this preliminary research.
Really quick, any other questions specifically for what CPWD does or how we could better assist you up to making this a better goal up here?
Thanks, Ari.
Okay.
I think you're great. I know you help a lot of people that I know, so thank you. And I definitely know how to reach you and
Great.
get information. So I think that's great. And thank you for sharing your information in the chat, which I have finally figured out how to open.
There you go. Great. Good
Yeah.
stuff.
So yeah, I don't have any other questions. Does anyone else on the board have any other questions at this point?
No, I don't have any questions. Thanks for the presentation.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here. We appreciate it. And I'll see you all around town.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks, Ari.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. That was one of our informational items tonight. The other one, should we go ahead and finish that one as well before we go into, oh, I'm sorry, we need to have public comment. We had a call in from Kathleen. Is she on there?
I don't think she's called in yet, so if you wanted to allow her, yes, a minute to get on. Sounds like she's gonna call in right now.
Okay. Should we move into the other informational one or just give it a minute?
Let's
I would
give
it
her.
a minute. Yeah, because I know it's she doesn't call in
Yeah.
for financial reasons, and so I'd hate to have her wait.
Yeah.
I see her name on the meeting and it looks like
She
she's
needs-
muted.
Yeah, she actually needs to call in. That's the only way she
Oh.
can provide verbal comment.
Oh, okay.
Miranda, can you tell us how that works when someone does call in like that? Do they call you directly?
No, they'll call the call-in number that's up here. There's a US toll number here. So she's got to do the toll number, the meeting access code, and the password. So it can take a couple minutes.
Okay.
And then after this, Barb, I think what we thought was we'd go to action. We would come
Okay.
back to information. We would go
Okay.
back to our agenda, if that still works for you.
That's great. I kind of figured that Macy would be on the meeting the whole time, so hers was not time sensitive.
So she just sent a message and she says, please move on and I will try to call until I can get through. She says it's not letting her in.
Okay.
So, Miranda, can you just would you mind, because since I'm presenting the next item, if you wouldn't mind kind of keeping an eye, if you see her, we can let her have her public comment.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. All right, so we will jump in to our action items this evening. And the first and only action item we have right now is our aim on committee membership. And as you'll remember, in December, we discussed that we were going to take everyone's temperature about the committees that they were on and see where new people were interested in joining and kind of just seeing what was going on this year. And so I sent out a survey and some more information, and I got responses from you all and put it all into this information for you. And so you'll remember I asked everybody's what board positions, but I also asked a couple of other questions that do we wish to remove any committees? And you all were in agreement that there were no committees that you felt needed to be moved. And then there was a question about, does the board wish to add any committees? And there was a vote to add a committee about Chamber of Commerce. So I put that in the packet for this evening. And there was another question about, are there any committees that should be dormant until activated for a project? And no, that you all felt that performance-based, now that it's moving forward, that shouldn't necessarily be dormant, which leads me to our committees for 2022. And I have Beautification Committee, we have Rhea Ortner and Ron Mitchell. For Big Springs, we have Andrew Duarte and Ron Mitchell. For Committee, we have Catherine Vallon and Jonathan Baumhofer. For Communications Committee, we have Barb Hart. And performance-based, we have open right now, though several of you expressed interest. That's why I thought we would talk about tonight and see who was interested in being our contact person to kind of keep us in line with ProSab in town as this moves forward. And we also have the Public Art Committee, which was Danielle Kraus and Rhea Ortner, and Wayfinding Committee, which is Steve Crow and Steve Roundtree. And so one of my first questions is there any members that feels that they want to join or leave any committees that I have listed? Not hearing anything, so I'm assuming people are okay with how things shook out. So I guess my main question this evening is the performance-based committee, and if there is someone that would like to be our contact person to make sure that we stay in step with ProSab and town as this item moves forward.
I put interest in the performance space. Maybe I can be in contact with ProSab, a liaison. I'd need to kind of, just getting started with it. So wanna yeah, certainly get tuned into where ProSab is at, but I'm uh, happy to be a part of that if it's open.
All right. And I'm happy to help with those connections as well. So you and I can work together on that. But thank you, Andrew, for stepping forward and taking that on for us.
Yeah.
So my final question to the board tonight is, does the board approve of the proposed 2022 committee membership as we've laid it out here?
I move that we approve the committee assignments at this point.
Second,
And Kate, will you call a roll on that?
Yes. Steve Carreau,
Yes.
Rhea Ortner,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes?
Andrew Duarte,
Yes.
Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Catherine Vallon.
yes.
All right, thank you all.
Great, thank you. And let's move on. It looks like Kathleen is still trying to get into the meeting. Miranda, where are we?
Sorry, let me see if I've seen anything here.
Oh, yeah, I'm chatting with her right now. She
Okay, thank you so much, Miranda.
issues. So we're working on it. I mean,
Okay. Should we move into the beautification budget?
Hello?
I think we've got it. There we
Yeah.
go.
Yay.
Sorry, I got to move out of the room because I'll get feedback from my computer. Kathleen Chabai, 18-year business owner and East Magnolia resident. I wanted to call in because I was looking through the packet from the last DDA meeting, and I see that a grant was approved to give money towards the Nederland Visitors Guide, and I read through the applicant's application, and I dispute this person being honest in their application, because for years people have come to me and I've noticed that my business has never been included in the visitor's guide whatsoever, and in the application, and I never questioned it because I always thought it was a private company, and that private company, I wasn't paying that private company for advertising, so I didn't give a crap about it. I'm also not on any of the maps that are ever put in there, even though my business has existed for 18 years. So when I read Kay Turnbaugh's application for the grant, I see she says all the Nederland businesses are listed, and she has been discriminating against my business for the entire 18 years that her magazine, her visitor's guide, has been there 25 years, I believe. And the 18 years I've been in business, I have been excluded intentionally from that magazine, and I wasn't in any of them. And this year, when I go look at her application and I look at last year's, she even has businesses like Renaissance Woman, who went out of business in March of 2020. She's still in the visitor's guide. And so I'm really upset that Kay lies and says this while she is discriminating against my business. And I might not be the only business. I never brought this up because I thought everybody that advertised that had their name mentioned in there was paying her to have their name mentioned in there. And now I'm realizing now that she's been getting grant money for this for numerous years, saying that she's including all businesses. So, and another problem I have is that Kay is an author, and according to the Nederland Code, the enforcement of the Nederland Business Code, Kay and Alan Apt, who's a trustee, were supposed to have business licenses to be able to write their books and then go ahead and promote the sales of their books at the library in the town limits. I'm not saying I agree with this the way that is, because I don't believe anyone that has a home business or does work at home should have to have a Netherlands business license. I have always said that. But when I see other businesses that are like other authors and publishers and people that do live in the town limits and do not have a brick and mortar business, Miranda has, and town previous Miranda has been forcing those people to get business licenses. And last year, when the town was unlawfully withholding my business license after I paid for the renewal for 6 months, they didn't give me my business license. I did a Cora request to find out if all these other people had business licenses who were in control of me not getting my license. And Kay nor Alan Apt had that license. So when I see Kay lie on this application, first off, she doesn't have a business license in Netherlands, and second off, she has excluded my business from her magazine for years, and since I've been existed. So I'm complaining, I guess, to the DDA, and I'm not going to blame you guys because you have no idea to know that she's been doing this, but she lied on her application. And I want the money to be considered to be, it was inappropriately given, and I feel like the DDA should let her know that she lied on her application and ask for the grant money back because she lied on her application. And I'm a little distraught to find out that I didn't realize, like I said, until I reviewed last week's packet, that magazine had been funded by the DDA, and I don't know how long it has been, but it looks to me like that's who's been funding it, even though it's her registered to her as a business outside of the town limits, and that she doesn't even have a Netherlands business license. So I want to throw that out there, and I don't have disputes with the DDA. There's no way you could know that she lied. However, now that I am making you aware that she lied and she is discriminating against my business for years, I don't believe that she should be given any DDA grant money for that magazine, and I, what can I say? And if this is not really, if she's actually, I mean, I don't know. If it's all been funded by grant money from the DDA, I don't know what position I'm in, but I'm not going to allow this discrimination against my business to continue. And the only reason I haven't brought about her magazine is because I thought it was that was privately funded by her, but now that I found out it's the DDA, I need you to be all aware of this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen.
Kathleen.
All right, let's move on to the next discussion item, which is the beautification budget, and Rhea will be presenting this.
Yeah, well, I just, before we start, Kathleen Chip, I just made some pretty serious allegations, and I don't know if this is something we need to put on our discussion item list to discuss that or not. I mean, what's the protocol here?
I would recommend, if you wanted to talk about it, do it under other business at the end of the meeting.
Okay, because I just think that we should at least have a brief chat about it. I don't know if I need to make a motion or if we can let's just talk about it under other business.
You would just do it under others at the end of the meeting.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
so moving on. This, for your review, is a beautification budget for the town of Nederland. These are the annual flowers around town. The budget is $25,000 that we are proposing. I tried to make it very concise here. We're going to hire a new professional gardener. Mike, who we've used the last couple of years, simply just doesn't have the time. Materials, and I estimate This $13,000 number is based on a rate of $25 an hour, but it will be hired as a range depending on the experience of the person and whether they actually have to go on DDA books or not. Materials, $600. Administration, that's about 5% of the total budget. Annual flowers, $6,000. This is a fairly large increase from last year because Barb, and I should mention, Barb Hart has been helping me fill in here on the beautification committee over the last several months. We are proposing to use Durant Hobby Acres. Andrea Duran, she owns it. She did the City of Blackhawk flowers. And I don't know if anyone had a chance to go through the City of Blackhawk last summer, but it was just amazing, full, popping color, cascading petunias, just looked awesome. Reason her costs are a little bit more is that, and if you read her little quote, a little bit the next page down, she really kind of talked about, maybe Kate, you can scroll there, or whoever's controlling this. She just said that she's a trained horticulturalist, and she really trains or caters to cities that don't have trained people on staff, and we don't. So she says, yes, my quote is a bit more compared to planting flats yourself. A flat is just, just the containers of plants. She caters towards cities and towns that don't have a trained horticulturalist on staff. She will deliver instant color with less growth time to reach full bloom. So they'll be larger in size, and she'll do as much design and planning on her end. And really important to us is that she's going to come up like 3 or 4 times this summer and give advice on how to take care of the flowers throughout the season, whether they need to be deadheaded, whether they need to be watered more, what kind of fertilizer to add. So we think that the increase in price is warranted. And I do want to say that if you look further on the packet, I did include the Acres quote to us, and you can see it's quite detailed with pictures of all the pots and what they're going to do. And if you scroll to page, I'm scrolling to it now, it's per quote, page 32 of the packet. You'll notice her total cost is $8,000, and I'm proposing to take out the window boxes. To me, spending $3,000 on the covered bridge is too much money. So I'm proposing that we just plant we'll just buy flats of lobularias, and we'll just plant those ourselves because I just think it's too much. So that'll bring this cost to about $6,000, and then we still have to buy those lobularias, which I'm hoping we can still buy from City Floral, the previous vendor. And I don't exactly know, it might be $300 or $400. So, and so that's how I got the $6,000 number. And let's see, also included budget. So I've got to scroll back to Silver. Let me see, maybe Kate. Okay, now I know we're going back and forth here a little bit. So back to the budget. Let's see. Maybe Kate can further. Kate, can you go back to the original budget for me? We've got $3,000 earmarked for noxious weed control, weed steaming. Again, this is totally organic, just using super saturated water, steam to kill noxious weeds in the downtown. Is Nikki still on the call? I didn't get a chance to talk to her about this before the meeting. But, as you recall, last year, it doesn't look like Nikki's still on, the Town of Public Works was going to take this on, and we were going to give them money to fix their hot seat machine to do weed steaming. And my understanding, the last I heard, is that it wasn't quite calibrated right, so it wasn't really working that well. And they had huge limitations on town staff last year, and so they didn't quite get it done. So I'm proposing again, give them money to the contractor from Boulder. I think I put their name in here, Steve, I put their website, who did it for us 2 years ago, to keep going on that. And the noxious weed control is something that's been beautification for the last several years, and that amount hasn't changed. And then Ron's truck, he has a truck for watering that my understanding proved very helpful. save time and labor. And so there's $900 budgeted to pay him for use of his truck because it does cost money for gas and maintenance and insurance and things like that. I did not put a contingency in here. I'm feeling like we don't need a contingency, that this is, we can do it for this amount. I guess the rest of the info is in the packet, but if you have any specific questions or concerns, I'm happy to answer them. And if there's no discussion, I would like to move that we put this in an action item. But let's go around and see if anyone has any questions or concerns.
Rhea, this doesn't include, or in this budget, is there labor for the DDA to hire to plant? This is
Yes. Well, the person we hire will be responsible for planting, and they may decide to use volunteers. So it's budgeted for between May 1st and October 10th, 20 hours a week for 26 weeks.
and at what rate?
25.
Well, this 13,000 is estimated at $25 an hour. However, I'm putting in here that we'll pay the person a range. I'm not committing to paying someone that much money because it's going to depend on their experience and whether they're an independent contractor or if they need to be on DDA books, in which case there's more overhead to the DDA.
Okay, I would just, I'm very interested if, and I would like to see us put out for bid for that. And I'd also like to say that I would like to bid on it myself. And if anybody has any objection to me bidding on this, please say so, and I won't do it.
On what?
Who would be Ron? I mean, you're saying you're going to take care of, you want to take care of the flowers?
I would like to be sure they get watered.
I think it, right, sure, but I think there's a huge, I don't see how you can be on the beautification committee and be hired to do this work.
Okay, that's all right. And I said.
Because I need somebody on the committee to help with the interview process. And so I was assuming you would be part of the committee, the selection committee, if you're going to be on the committee with me.
Okay.
So I think that if you wanted to apply, you can be on the beautification committee. I think would be my major concern.
Okay, I'll stay on the committee and we'll hire somebody else.
I mean, but also I forgot to mention in the packet is a request for qualifications that I modified about something we used a couple years ago, because part of the discussion will be, and I'm potentially move this as an action item, is to get this RFQ out as soon as possible. So hopefully folks have had a chance to look at that RFQ. Ron, of course, you and I can talk about it later if you haven't, since you're newly on the beautification committee.
I just want to be sure
okay.
We get it watered. That's all.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Ron. Does anyone else have any thoughts or ideas about this? Let's just go around the circle real quick. Steve Carreau.
Yes, thank you, Barbara. And thanks, Rhea, for the presentation. I don't have any questions. I thought it was very clearly laid out, and I think the numbers look pretty decent from what little I know. And I agree with you. I think the contingency is probably not necessary, especially depending on whomever we hire. You know, the 13,000 makes up a good portion of the cost. And if it's budgeted at that 26 weeks, 20 hours a week at $25 an hour, I think that we might end up with a little bit of savings there that could help in other areas. I also like the idea of hiring this person who's done a great job that you and Barbara had seen in Blackhawk. So I'm all for it, and thank you.
Great, thanks, Steve. And Andrew.
No, I don't have any questions. Again, I think it was clearly laid out. I like detail. I'd support moving this to action item.
Great, thank you. And Danielle.
Thank you guys for the presentation. For Ron, maybe it could be encouraged that one of the volunteers be Ron, but of course, being part of the committee, I think that the oversight will be there. I also support bringing this as an action item. I think the numbers and everything written out are great. And again, for not being as informative with all of it, I really appreciate you guys doing the research, finding the right people, and doing a good job bringing it to us and having it ready. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Danielle. And Steve Roundtree.
I don't have any questions. Thanks for all the information that was provided in the packet. Super helpful to be able to look through and understand what's here. I agree, it should just be moved to an action item.
Okay, great, thank you. And Catherine.
I'm also in favor of moving it to an action item. Well done with the presentation and the preparation for it.
Great, thank you. And I am assuming that Jonathan is not on.
There's some reason you skipped me.
Oh, you had spoken up before. Ron.
I'm sorry, Ray. I had a very hard time making out anything you said. The fidelity on my computer just was bad. So my question is, it's really the whole budget is comprised of two. One, the consultant who's going to do the work, and then whoever we hire to do the daily 20 hours a week for watering and weeding and that sort of thing. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know if you're in front of your computer, but I have a little chart right there on the agenda information memo. Are you, and I have a chart and I can itemize every single cost again. I think, Kate, maybe you can go up a page there. Are you looking at a computer, Ron?
Well, I'm looking at what is coming out, and I'm having to use a magnifying glass to see it.
Let's see, is somebody who is controlling the presentation? Could you, whoever's doing that, could you move up one page, please?
We're going to have a long meeting, Rhea, so could I just do it on the side with you?
No, it's here. Well, no, it's important you look at this because
One more page
I'm
up.
asking approval.
Right now in front of me is a history and previous board action. Details.
Yes, I'm hope. Yep, just give us a second here. Okay. So of the 25,000, 13,000 is going to go to the person who's going to do the watering and maintenance. 20 hours a week for 26 weeks, $600 for fertilizer, unforeseen replacement wicks for the farm tubs, extra soil and things like that. Not anticipating replacing all the soil, we just did it last year. $1,000 for the ED for administration costs.
I've got it. You don't have to go any further.
$6,000. Well, $6,000 for the annual flowers, $500 for some perennial flowers to help amend some of our perennial beds. That's still something we want to keep working on. $3,000 for noxious weeds, which I'm proposing to hire out to the contractor we used 2 years ago, because I have a feeling with the change in public works staff, who knows if they'll be able to handle that. And then $900 actually for you, Ron, for rental of the watering truck.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Great, thanks, Rhea. Just to clarify real quickly, to move it, all we have to do to move it to an action item, Miranda or Kate, is to make a motion and move it to an action item. And then we want to come up with the wording to be a little more exact without that 3,000. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion to move this to an action item.
I make a motion to move this 2022 beautification budget agenda item to action.
Second.
Great, and Kate, will you call the roll?
Yes, Steve Carreau,
Yes.
Rhea Ortner,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes.
Andrew Duarte,
Yes.
Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Catherine Vallon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Then I would entertain a motion to approve this.
I make a motion to approve the 2022 beautification budget, as well as the RFQ, also known as the request for qualifications for immediate release.
And is there any discussion? No. Sorry, just to clarify, to approve the budget as it came in was 25,000. Are we approving it at 25,000 or are we approving it at 22,000? And should that be in the motion?
Why would we approve it for only 22?
Because you're not doing the 3,000 on the bridge.
Oh, no. Let me clarify. Duran Hobbies Acres total quote was $8,000. So what I proposed is we're not paying them to do the bridge flowers, so it would be $5,000 to them, plus an extra $1,000, which is probably a little bit too much money, to get other flowers for the bridge in flats to plant ourselves, which I anticipate costing like $300. So there's some wiggle room in that flower budget.
Yeah, so the budget as it is at 25,000. Yeah.
As it is, please, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying. I was a little bit lost on that one. We have a motion and a second. Kate, do you want to call the roll?
I do. Steve Carreau,
Yes.
Rhea Ortner,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes.
Andrew Duarte,
Yes.
Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Catherine Vallon.
Yes.
Thank you all. And I do want to add a point of clarification. So this will come back next month with the resolution, so that we can set up our funding, get our loan from the water fund with town. But this is setting it off so that we can release the RFQ and start the other pieces of the process. But you will see this item again as an action item next month with the resolution.
And Kate, I'm not sure if you saw the email from Andrea Duran of Duran Hobby Acres. She said she did require, I think it was a 25% deposit by February 15th. And so now with your statement of the timeline, I'm a little bit concerned.
We have leftover money. We have leftover money from previous years for beautification. So there is money in beautification. I'm just getting this allocation for this year from our budget approved by the Board of Trustees. But there is funding available.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you, Rhea.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to the public art budget, which will be presented by Danielle.
Hi, everyone. So my presentation is not as well done as Rhea's was. One of the reasons for that, and I have my other computer here to look over everything, is because I accidentally clicked on the wrong thing on the agenda items, and I will be reading that to you. And Kate sent out an email that has some photos for the projected sites, and I'm trying to get myself organized here. So for the projected budget, there were two things, the projected budget and a change in the contract. The more important one is the change in contract, and the committee put together a couple of changes and we wrote it up and we sent it out to you guys to look over it. Just a few things to clarify about buildings being sold while we're in the middle of working on a mural, along with having approval for photos being published during creation of the murals. I'm drawing a blank on the other one. I'm bringing it up. I'm sorry, it's been a long day and I am disorganized. But it's fairly similar to what the contract was last year, except with a few changes that we needed to bring to you guys to make sure everything is legitimate. I don't think we need to take it to a lawyer. I guess that could be up to discussion with you. One of the things we would like to do is be able to get it to the 2 people that we are looking to make murals with this year, so that we can have everything lined up for this spring. The revised contract for murals, the summary is NPAC has taken into account some of the hangups through our experiences with our first mural and adjusted the contract between the NDDA, the building owners, and the artists. We would like to bring this revised contract to the proposed site's building owners before we put out a call for artists, so that we are well lined up for starting work as the weather breaks in June. And the contract was included. The call for entry was also included. That was what I accidentally clicked on instead of the aim that I will be reading about our proposed sites. That kind of helps refresh your memory on what the call looks like, what the budget was in comparison to what we are looking at for this year. And for the contract, do you guys approve of the revised contract? Were you all able to look through it? Do you have any problems with it, or anything that you think we should add to it before we bring it to the people we would like to work with this year?
Let's see. Let's go around the circle real quick and see if there are any questions. Let's start with Rhea.
Thanks, Danielle. In the proposed budget, is that something that you're hoping the DDA will approve?
Yes. So
This meeting?
I was just going to jump in. I think maybe we should talk about the budget and then maybe segue to the agreement, because like Danielle said, the changes to the agreement were small, just like she had just lined out based on our experience this fall with some uncertainty and just, going through this all for the first time. So I think it would be helpful to talk about the budget and kind of the way, the path that the Public Arts Committee is seeing, and then maybe segue to that. Would that be helpful for everyone?
Yes, and could you also scroll to the budget?
To the budget, yes.
In the packet for the screen share.
There we are.
All right.
Okay, so the mural on the bridge we have $2,000 for.
Well, here,
and Katrina Hart is gonna
Rhea,
help with.
hold on just one second. Let's let Danielle present, because there's some different pieces
Okay,
in here
sounds good.
that weren't able to be included in the packet. So I just want to make sure that it's clear to everyone, because I bet she can answer some of the questions you have if she kind of goes through here. So I apologize, but I think it'll be helpful.
Great. So starting over, going over the budget first instead of the contract, and I will read this to you, the aim that I goofed up. Projected budget for Nederland Public Art. The summary is Nederland Public Art Committee has been lining up our 2022 projects with 2 property owners for 4 murals, as well as a community stewardship project for a recently passed artist's artwork. This year's projects are Dave Poe's concrete wall across from the community garden, along with the community garden shed, and Tebow Properties concrete wall at the shopping center facing the west across from Blue Owl, as well as the wall above that beside the health center also facing west. This will give us 4 sites to work with, and we have been in touch with both property owners and look to go over a revised contract with them before I'll call for artists. We hope to get 2 artists for the 2 locations, but we are open to collaborations since it is a lot of surface area. And we are also open to not covering all 4 sites depending on response to the call. The Community Stewardship Project is for the covered bridge art by Kevin, who has recently passed due to COVID-19 complications. Katrina Harms has volunteered to help coordinate restoration of the 10 25-year-old murals adorning the town's covered bridge. She has contacted Kevin's friend, Mike Foster, who is also willing to help with the project in funding and resources for restoration, protective coating, and accountability of the work. The hope is to preserve this well-known local artist's work and help keep it where it belongs, either within town or with Kevin's family. And I sent an email earlier, including photos of the community garden shed, Dave Poe's concrete wall, the lower half of the shopping center along the steps, and the upper half by the health center, as well as a photo of the covered bridge that has Kevin's 10 murals on. And what we've recognized with the 10 murals is some of Kevin's work has disappeared throughout town over the past few years. And there's people in the community who are hoping that we will help get this artwork be accounted for and preserved and spoken about what to do with it, whether we're going to keep it where it is for a couple more years and then maybe replace it. I've also talked with Mike Foster about the possibility of restoring them. He feels confident that he can do it. He's also a very close friend of Kevin's and understands his work and is willing to have costs covered to do the restoration and volunteer some time. And I would volunteer some time too to have the work done to get it taken care of. As we look at the budget on the screen, the murals are accounted for. We are looking to get this as a rough budget so that you guys understand what we're looking at. And then if it is in conversation approved, then we can fine tune it and make sure everything is accounted for in a more thought out budget like Reyes was, which was wonderful. Looking at the stewardship, it puts us a little over the 10,000. And then as we fine tune it, it might be a little bit more. But if Mike is willing to help with the labor, and when he talked about the materials to cover all 10 murals, it looks like it would be feasible. So at this point, I'm curious what you guys think of the projected budget, the projects we're looking to do this year, and any thoughts that you might have.
Great, thanks, Danielle.
Danielle, I just have.
Go ahead, Rhea.
Oh, I just have a question. I'm confused how many murals we're planning to do this summer. 2 murals? 1 mural? I mean, excluding the covered bridge. How many murals is this $5,000 artist stipend going to cover? Is it for 1 project or 2?
It's 2 locations, and we are looking at 2 locations per location. So it would be 4, and we are.
Wait, I don't understand. What do you mean 2 locations per location?
So 2, there's Dave Poe, who has the concrete wall across from the community garden shed. And so the hope was if we're going to do that concrete wall, that we would also do the community garden to have the same theme on it, which we don't have to do if we decide that that's too much.
No, that's fine. I'm just trying to understand it. And so that would be the same artist to do the concrete wall and the shed. Is that what you're anticipating?
That's what we would hope for consistency. However, we're open to collaboration. If there's one artist who wants to do both of those and comes up with a plan for them that is approved, that would be great. If there is a collaboration where there's more than one artist and they work together and we get that approved, we're okay with that too. It would mainly depend on a response to the call. And if they're
But it's gonna be one call for both locations. Is that correct?
that I haven't thought through because I wanted to bring this to you guys and see what you thought of it, and then we would go to the next steps to find
Right, and
what the call would look like.
got it. Yeah, and I mean, I'm on the committee with you, so I know I missed the last meeting because I had to bring my son down to the doctor for a broken wrist, but I I think some of this minutia we can work out in the committee. But I just wanted to just kind of try to understand it. I know we've had a lot of meetings and there's been a lot of discussion. And so I don't have any other questions. And I think this makes sense. So thank you.
You're welcome. And to clarify, for Tebow properties, there are 2 walls there and it kind of applies in the same way. When we put out the call, and we'll find out the details with that after we talk with you guys, we can either, the walls are large, the lower wall and the upper wall, those 2, I would hope for 2 different artists. And we don't have to do both walls either. So again, it would depend on what you guys would approve and what the response would be with the call for artists. Any other questions?
Great, thanks.
Danielle, this is Steve Carell. I just had a question on the green section on your budget, project budget. I was wondering, what is the design fee? Exactly the $1,200. What would that be for?
So the design fee at $1,200 includes 4 different design fees for the 4 different walls at the locations. So that would be divvied up depending on what we approve, what we want to put a call out for, and what we get a response to. The design fees are so that we are paying the artist for their time. And once we get a call, once we get into conversation with an artist and get into contract, the design fee covers the time put into designing the mural. So when we do a call and we look at their resumes and portfolio, they're not putting the work into designing something for this mural until we agree to go into contract with them. Otherwise, we're taking up their time and that's not fair. So once we go into a contract with the artist, then we pay them to come up with a design. Then we bring that design to the board, have it approved, and then they can start work. Does that help?
Yes, yeah. And then the $5,000, is that also divided among the 4 murals?
Yes.
For travel and labor and actually producing the murals in a way?
Yes. And
Okay.
there's going to be, depending on what we approve and fine tuning this, there's going to be adjustment there. And I think that there might be an error in the materials and tools that we'll have to look through, but we will bring that back and clarify all of that. So.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my only questions, I think.
Thank you, Steve.
Andrew, do you have any questions?
No, Steve kind of clarified what I was wondering about, but don't have any questions.
Great, thank you. And Ron, do you have any questions?
I think you should increase your artist's stipend substantially. I think it'd help the project. Just my opinion.
Thank you for your opinion, Ron. I would agree if we could get a little bit more, I would feel much more comfortable. However, I do understand that taking on potentially 4 murals is a lot. I would be okay if we agreed to 2 murals and bring it down a little bit. And that way we're still within budget and can give the artists more money for the stipend. But if we're willing to put a call out for these murals and get these large projects in the works and have a little bit more room in our budget, I would be open to that too. So I'm up to that idea if you guys are.
Thanks, Danielle. And Steve Roundtree.
Yeah, I don't think I have any questions on it. I tend to agree with Ron that maybe a little more money in the artist stipend helps make this happen. I think the goal is for them to be like a long-term project, so it'd be nice to, I think it may just help get it done. So
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
And Catherine.
I don't think I have any questions at this time.
Great, thank you. So since this is a discussion item, do we need to do anything further tonight? Is there any public comment on this? Hearing and seeing none. What would be our next step?
This is Ray. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to move this to an action item to approve the budget, unless there were a couple comments about increasing the budget. So Danielle, I'd like you to respond to that. Did you want to try to increase the budget, or
with the encouragement to increase the budget, I would either like to get a ballpark and approve it, or I would like to bring this back next month and have a more definitive number that's higher than our total here and look to have that approved in our next meeting.
well, I suppose we could wait it.
I think we lost you, Rhea.
Yeah.
Oh,
This is Steve.
Somebody else was going to say something.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just going to say that I think it feels better to me if Danielle could, perhaps talk to a couple of the people that she had been talking to as far as the artists go, and maybe think through that artist stipend a bit and any other factors here, the materials and tools. Not sure exactly what that covers, but seems kind of low if that's like paints and things and protective overcoats. And then bring this back as an action item for the next meeting, unless there is a real time crunch about, getting this moving. But it sounds like it's more in the discovery stage at this point for this year's projects.
I would agree that this particular part isn't in the time crunch. What I would like to have approved is the contract so that we can start talking to the building owners and have that lined up in time. And then we can fine tune these numbers, because it sounds like that the board is okay if it is higher than what we're projecting here. And then we can have a more definitive plan and bring it to you next month.
If I may interject, just and see what the other board members feel, but I feel that you're not going to get applications unless we provide a really good incentive, and we want good work. So I'm looking and thinking about $3,000 per artist, their fee, and I'd like others to comment on that figure.
So I would like to, this is Kate, I would like to jump in just real quick and highlight something that if Danielle said it, I apologize. But these figures were all based on what we did last year. And basically, as Danielle laid out, they kind of put it times 4 or divided by 4, however it worked out to make this happen. So a lot of these are based on what we spent last year already. And we did receive a very good response. But I do think the feedback that everyone's giving about increasing the artist stipend is something that the committee has discussed as well. So that's great feedback. But I did want you to know that a lot of these costs and all of this was basically how we did it last year.
Can I give public comment?
Is this Kathleen?
Kathleen, yes.
Are we
I
at
believe
the,
public comment comes after the discussion, does it not, Barb?
I thought I missed it, actually. I was trying to call in when Barb said public comment. I'll wait until whenever. I just would like to speak to this.
excellent.
I think everyone has asked questions. Does anyone on the board have additional questions or comments before opening it to public comment? If
I
there are
have-
no,
I have a question kind of from the perspective of once an artist has gone ahead and given I guess, a draft or a sketch of here's what I have in mind. What happens if like the owner of the building goes, I don't want that on my building?
So that is part of what we are working on, and in conversation and working with it in our meetings with the building owners, they are going to have say in part of the jury for selecting the artist. They will have say in the design, and then they will have, and we're fine tuning it, a say on whether they are against it or not. But to include them in the process from the beginning is to assure that we are creating something that they are on board with, so that we are not wasting our time or our finances in creating the work.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
thanks, Danielle. And I just want to point out real quickly, when we did our budget last year, we budgeted $10,000 for public art. So this is already over what the amount is budgeted at.
Yes, which is why I'm saying, like, we came up with a few sites and people were excited about it. And I'm okay if we hold back on a few of those sites and stay within budget. But if I remember, we were also encouraging, if we found the incentive and the motivation, that it was open to approving more if we wanted to. So I'm up either way.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'd like to see it come back to the board next month as possibly an action item with the budget really fitting in where you need it to fit in, but also, if possible, sticking in the original amount of 10,000, which we had agreed on as a board a couple of months ago and was approved by the BOT, because I think that sticking to what we originally planned is a good idea. And if things are going crazy, we can also come back in a couple of months and present a new idea and see if there's any way to add to the budget. But it would be really nice to have it stick in that first amount that we had agreed on. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It would make sense to keep it within budget. And then if we have other things come up, to potentially increase it then, rather than go over budget at the beginning. So we'll go over that, and I will bring it back next month.
Okay, thank you. And then if no one else has any other questions and Kathleen wants to make a comment, I think this would be the time to do that.
Thank you, Barb. Kathleen Chip, I first want to, I think that the mural and the paintings are an awesome thing for our community. I fully support this project. I know wherever I go into any other town, when there's murals painted, I have pictures of all of them. So I think this is great. I do think that the artists should get paid more. I don't know how big the murals are, but I'm thinking, you know, the $3,000 to $5,000 range. I don't know what size, but I just feel like for the amount of attention and goodness it brings to the community, and you do want decent artists. So I would like to pay artists $3,000 to $5,000. And being an artist myself, that I feel that's reasonable. But the other thing I wanted to say is I want to correct. I don't know who it was speaking, but they said Kevin had died of COVID. Kevin actually didn't have anything. His death had nothing to do with COVID. And I just want to correct that, because when people go and say, you know, they hear it someplace, and I've heard it like 3 or 4 times. I saw a thread on his own Facebook page where everyone said he died of COVID. He did not die of COVID. I saw his death certificate, and it had nothing to do with COVID. And his last Facebook post was he was leaving the hospital and he was negative for COVID. Whoever his friend was that had is controlling his Facebook page now had deleted that message, so it's no longer there. But Kevin was a very good friend of mine, and I know what was on his death certificate, and it wasn't even a single symptom from COVID, and it had nothing to do with COVID. So I just wanted to correct that, because I'm sick of people telling me Kevin died of COVID. He didn't die of COVID. It had nothing to do with COVID. So, and I'm glad that we're gonna clean up the paintings from what they are on the bridge. And I had mentioned in a BOT meeting that I feel like there should be a plaque saying that Kevin was a longtime member of the community and that he did all that original artwork. And I think it should be in the bridge, that plaque. And I don't know if the DDA maybe should apply for that dedication plaque, but I do think it should be right there in the bridge with his artwork. And that's my public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Great. Do we want to try to approve the contract, or leave that until next month when we have this a little bit more sorted out?
Well, the contract I would really like to have approved, if we can look at that. Because getting that into conversation and bringing it to the building owners would be crucial to our time period, which is why I had brought that one up first.
Okay, and I had one quick question about that, because the DDA as a board is making the contract with the building owners, so we see those before anyone signs them. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we will have to vote to sign on this agreement when we work together with the artists, like we did in August of this year.
I'm just a quick question. I'm thinking if, you know, language was modified, are there like red lines that show what modifications you made that you're looking for approval for?
Yeah. I meant to have that written up, and I apologize that I dropped the ball on that. I'm looking for my folder right now to explain quickly. Yeah, that makes sense, and thank you for asking about that.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful for everyone. And then I don't know what our, you know, I mean, not to make a huge issue out of a contract, but given that, you know, I don't know if it's something we want or the DDA attorney to weigh in, or as you said, it's all minor housekeeping stuff, but without, yeah, having those sentences at least pointed out would be helpful.
So Andrew, I'm going to jump in about having an attorney review. Given that the changes were not substantial, not my feeling that it needs to go through another legal review, but that's up to the board to decide. But I just wanted to weigh in that those changes were very minor based on our experience in the fall, like Danielle had laid out.
No, I get it. They're minor. I just, yeah, it's just what are they? That's all.
Mm-hmm. And the original contracts were created and I'm drawing a blank on her name, but by the consultant last year.
Yes, Carissa Samaniego.
Thank you.
So Danielle, are you ready to highlight the changes?
Yeah, I'm bringing up the email, and I'm sorry I don't have it more organized again. As I'm bringing up the email to look at it, because all these screens are confusing. Here it is. Mainly, it might take longer if I go through and find them all because I did not highlight them.
Danielle, do you want to share your screen if you have something or you don't have it highlighted?
I have it up on my computer, but I would have to read through it all as opposed to this short list that I had of the changes that we wanted to make.
Yeah, can you read your short list of changes?
Yes.
Okay.
So we wanted to have access and ownership of PR materials. So when we take photos of things, we're allowed to use them to give to press purposes online and in a paper. We wanted approval time for the photos. So if we needed approval from the artist, then there's a time frame that they need to respond to us in order to be able to use that material. We've included that the artist provide a bio and an artist statement that we are allowed to use for press release, and a memorandum of understanding of the building ownership, that it is not going to be sold and therefore kill our contract, that if the building is for some reason sold, like business connection, that this contract is going to transfer to the new person who owns the building so that we don't have to go through all of this and wait again on our timeline. We also changed the timeline for 2 months that the artist has time to work on it, and the stipulation of notified delays need to be written and sent to the NDDA director. So if the artist is delayed for any reason, the communication is kept up. And those were the changes that we made.
Great, thank you, Danielle. Does anyone have further questions about the contract? Do we feel comfortable with that contract? Kate, do we have to take that to an action item to approve it?
Yes.
I move we bifurcate this and approve the contract, or move the contract portion of the proposal to an action item so that it can go forward with the business property owners, and that we reconsider the rest of the proposal at the next meeting.
A second.
Okay, and Kate, can you call the roll?
Steve Crow,
Yes.
Rhea Ortner,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes?
Andrew Duarte,
Yes.
Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Catherine Vallon.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Great, thank you guys. I look forward to bringing the budget back next month, and I will get the contract to the people we are talking with. And
We need one more motion to
Oh,
approve the
yeah, one more
contract now
motion.
that we got into action.
sorry, I jumped on that.
It's okay.
I move the former discussion item be passed as an action item.
My second.
And Kate?
Steve Crow,
Yes.
Rhea Ortner,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes?
Andrew Duarte,
Yes.
Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Catherine Vallon.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Now we're going to move on to the DDA grants, and Kate is going to present this.
Hi, everyone. Miranda's going to kind of tag team with me, and we also have Amanda McDonald from Frozen Dead Guys Days here tonight. The reason that you're seeing this agenda item and the previous grant application is because we need to discuss how you would like people to access the $20,000 that we set aside for parking for this year. So this conversation is coming up because of Frozen Dead Guys Days. So that's why we thought it would be helpful to have Amanda here to give you some feedback on some of the costs that she's seeing for things these days. And Miranda's also going to weigh in on that as well. But I have included the application that we have for our special event funding, because if you choose to use an application, there's a logical place to just have it be one document for event organizers or people that want to access the funds to have it. Or you could decide to go another way with allocating the $20,000 that you set aside for parking and food safety. But we thought we would kind of put this out there for discussion tonight. And just generally, the question that I have for the board is, are there other things that would be helpful with the...
Kate, you're fading out for me anyway.
Sorry. Sorry, that threw me off for a second. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it would be helpful for Miranda to jump in now and kind of give you some of the feedback that she's been hearing. But that's where we thought that the conversation, before we get to the incentives, we would hear about what our big event coming up, first event of the year really in NED is, and what they're experiencing and what Miranda and Town are experiencing. And then we can kind of get into incentives after that. But that's why you're seeing the grant application again. And so that's a conversation that we're trying to have a little bit tonight. Miranda, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. So last week, the Board of Trustees approved the license agreement for Frozen Dead Guy Days. And the some of the discussions that were surrounding that is just the cost, and a lot of that is cost of contracted services and or use of public facilities. So just kind of some context for police department services for a 3-day event. If we were only to use rangers and our staff, which is a staff of 4, for their hourly rate times the number of hours needed, it would cost an event approximately $21,000. And so that's not even including adding on sheriff's department or other personnel that may be needed. Of course, we recognize that's a huge financial burden for an event to take on. And so the discussion amongst the board was, are there ways in which town in the upcoming budget season for 2023 can allot money to the police department to use to offset those costs? But are there ways in which the DDA could also set aside funds to maybe reduce traffic control? Flaggers are also incredibly expensive. So do traffic control or policing, or maybe they help to cover the deposit for a facility rental. Some of just the ways in which maybe just within our own fee schedule, we can work collaboratively with the DDA to waive some of those or have them financially handled by the DDA. And so I think we're just looking to have a larger discussion, not necessarily action tonight, but what are ways in which the town and the DDA could better support festivals, mainly from kind of a fiscal standpoint, to encourage them to want to be here, because Frozen Dead Guy Days did share that, you know, the cost as is would be hard to continue. And I don't want to speak for Amanda, so would love to turn it over to her from her specific experience, but that's kind of the discussion happening at the Board of Trustees level as it relates to festivals and large events. Amanda, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Basically, you know, I guess it is a changing world. Was a bit of a
Inaudible.
surprise.
Turn up the sound.
I can't hear you, Amanda.
Amanda, we can't hear you now. Before you were very faint, but now we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
You're still
Can you hear
really
me now?
faint.
Really faint.
So I know Olive, and I don't want to put Olive on the spot, but I think Olive is also with the.
Oh, there we go. I'm so
Oh,
sorry about that.
Oh,
there you
there she
go.
is. Okay, thank you.
Hi. I'm sorry. I was plugged into a thing charging my phone on a Bluetooth. Can you hear me now, though?
Yes,
Okay.
perfect.
I will try and be really quick. It was just that, obviously it was heard that the deposit was almost quadrupled, I believe. And then the police bill, and I understand it's a changing world, but it went from $5,800 to an estimate of $30,000 in 2 years. So I think that it needs to be determined and really analyzed, all the things that are completely necessary and, they need to be provided. But it would be nice if, I think if town wants these events, that, that's a pretty big jump. And that's, I don't want to say arbitrary, but, so, just something to come up with a kind of consistent plan. If the DDA wants to have events, that events can walk in and know what to expect from, for police expenses. And my last add on is that, I'm listening to all these wonderful projects and this hard work that everyone's doing. And it's all surrounding around trying to get grants and funding and that. And I just think that it's being overlooked, the tremendous funding that the festival does bring to so many facets of the town, so many artists, so many people that work. I just sometimes it's a substantial amount of money. So I don't know, but a $20,000 to $30,000 police bill would not be feasible, I don't think, for anybody. So that's, I don't know if that how to make that more reasonable, or I know that's not what we're talking about exactly, but I just mean setting up a system so that events can work with town and the DDA for everybody's benefit in a reasonable manner.
Well, this 20,000 was specifically targeted at traffic control.
No, it was not, Ron. That the 20 to 30 is just for police. We're paying an additional 15,000 for
No, I'm
flaggers.
talking about what the DDA passed a motion to subsidize traffic control to the tune of 20,000, but we didn't flesh it out with a plan. So you're applying, it sounds like to me, for part of that for traffic control, because that's where that money is going to go.
Oh, excuse me. My apologies. I thought we were talking about having it helping with policing. I didn't even, flaggers. Yes, they wanted us to have, right now we were looking at about $10,000 to $15,000 in parking control in addition to the police.
That's good. We now understand each other.
Okay. My apologies. I forgot that they wanted parking too.
Thanks, Amanda. I think that helps us a little bit to understand kind of how festivals work. And as we start talking about new things like performance space, that's going to be really important. Tonight, the hope is to flesh out the application process and then get those applications out so that people can apply and including Frozen Dead Guy Days. I believe that we'll have the application approved at the next before the next meeting, and then be able to get it out to the public. It's already been approved. Our big question tonight is whether or not we can use the same application for both funds and maybe put a box on it that says this is for parking or traffic, or this is for the other program we have, which is to support events, which is a $10,000 fund. So I think if we can kind of discuss that a little bit more, it would help us have a way forward with this item tonight.
I apologize. I think I kind of misunderstood, but I will say, yes, I think it would be fantastic if there would be a something you could apply to, and then also really solid numbers of, what the town requires and what is needed for events, so it kind of goes hand in hand, that application amount is really in concert with what town is requiring, so that it makes it realistic for an event to go on and to apply, so that they can, help subsidizing the town's requirements and needs.
Absolutely.
This is Rhea. I have a question, if it's appropriate. The $20,000 to $30,000 for police. How many police folks would be employed for how many hours? I'm
So
just
it's
curious. It
yeah.
does seem high to me.
It's all different versions. So town charges anywhere from $75 to $95 an hour for our officers, depending on rank. The sheriff's department, in order to get their personnel, you're looking at $95 an hour. Rangers at $16.25 per person. So again, it's every level of officer costs different amounts. And then we're looking at spreading them out over 3 days. And so that's kind of how the breakdown comes, that the total ended up being a bit over 30,000 is what we quoted to Frozen Days on the high end after some negotiations. And then we're going to try to staff close to, if not under, that amount.
Now, you mentioned Rangers at $16.25. What did you mean by that?
So Rangers have to have police supervision. And so when we bring on Rangers, they can't do much without an officer present. And so that's why the fee is to offset their contract. And we don't charge nearly as much for them. They are, of course, a person who is a body there, but they can't do a lot of the direct enforcement. They're just more like eyes and ears on the ground.
But it's $16.25 an hour versus maybe $95 an hour.
Correct, but you have to have the $95 an hour people to oversee the Rangers. You can't just have Rangers without officers.
Sure. But I guess I'm just wondering, is there a way to have more Rangers or security? I don't even know if we can have security volunteers. It seems like always there's people with those security jackets that are volunteering, and have less of the $95 an hour people, because it does seem like $30,000 for police. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm not involved in festivals, but it seems like a lot of money. And is there a way?
Yeah, the police department, they are ultimately ones to make that determination from a health and safety standpoint. So Larry, of course, is aware that there is security, but he still felt it was appropriate to have the spectrum of officers there, because you just never know what's going to happen. So ultimately, I think what it boils down to is police, making that decision for what they feel is best for health and safety.
And can I just jump in? It looks like, at this point, though, the action is really doesn't necessarily get into specific policing costs or makeup, but more, do we approve of using an application to distribute funds? Are we fine with the application, right?
Yeah, you're right, Andrew. So what we're looking for about this is the direction that you want to go with allocating that $20,000 for traffic that you had allocated in the budget. So it's, do you want to use the grant application, or do you want to say tonight you want to spend it on certain things? That's what you have the wiggle room to kind of decide as a group this evening, is if you want to have it be accessed like you access a special event funding through a grant application, or if you want to say, hey, we want to give $10,000 for 2 weekends, or we want to do 4 weekends at $5,000. I don't know what that is, but I'm just kind of giving you some examples that those are your different sorts of options.
As your treasurer, I'd like to speak up. Frozen Dead Guy Days brings into the town in gross revenues in the businesses at least $1 million. And if you take the multiplier fact, it probably multiplies into 3 million over a week's time. I think, and I would like to propose so that we get something, that we take 1/4 of our funds, which is $5,000, and we commit it. At this point, if it's a discussion item, this is what the discussion is about, $5,000 to traffic control specifically, which means flaggers or frozen dead guy days, to help them put this event on. That's my proposal. It's not a motion. Please discuss it.
Thanks, Ron. Let's go around the circle real quick. I like that idea. I think that we would allocate it at the February meeting if we approve this grant process of how to apply for the grant. And I think that the application is great. I would like to put a box on the application that says whether or not it's for traffic or if it's for other event related fees or charges. And that would be my only change to the application, would be to have, when they fill out the application, tell us what it's for so that we make sure we're allocating it properly out of the right fund, because there are two.
I'm proposing that the 5,000 comes out of the 20,000 that we put for traffic control only.
Okay. Are there other questions or comments about that specifically? Let's go around the circle and start with Andrew.
No, I mean, it seems like we're trying to do a few different things, just to be clear, for at least how I see it. It seems like, we're trying to come up with a certain amount to set aside specifically for frozen dead guy days. And in parallel, we're also, being in agreement about the grant application and what's on it and how to access it. But if we, as part of the motion, set aside money for frozen dead guy days, which I'm fine with and support of, maybe it's also just cleaning up the language on the application that has the, it's got costs for traffic controls, acceptable uses. So yeah, I feel like everybody's in agreement, frozen dead guy days is important. I don't know if there's any other big festivals, special events planned for 2021 or 2022. But certainly, having the grant stay open and available for any other applicants is important. I think I support, I agree with Ron that setting aside at least 5,000 for frozen dead guys parking will be, worthy investment and a good use of the grant money. But I just, I'm thinking about, can we clean up the way we, get this motion handled, so that, if anyone's got ideas on how to do that, I'm open for them. That's what I've got.
So, Andrew, you'll see at the bottom, if we choose to move the application forward, there's a motion to move the item to the action item. And then we have started to approve the NDDA funding application, but there you could add or subtract whatever language that the board came up with for the motion.
Okay, I see that there now. Yep.
And I think we kept the application kind of vague on purpose, so I think it can be used for both. And the only reason I think it should be two applications if they're applying for two different funds is because one has a cap, the other does not necessarily have a cap. So I think the first process is to approve the grant funding application, or to move it to an action item to approve it for use for access for traffic and event, other event funding. Is that correct, Kate?
Yes. Yes, and then if you wanted to add the 5,000 set aside for the Frozen Dead Guys days, you could put it in there as well.
And I think that could be a separate.
Yeah, or it could be a separate, whatever, but that's the other piece that if you choose to move forward with that you would need to capture in the motion.
Okay. And we haven't heard from everybody yet, so let's go around this circle real quickly and just get, if there are any other questions or comments. I'm just going to call everybody out. Danielle? Yep. How about Steve Roundtree?
Yeah, I guess I have a question. So has there been an application for grant funding for Frozen Dead Guy Days? Or are we just doing an end around on the application and saying $5,000?
There has not been yet. That was why I wanted to get the application approved first.
Okay. That's my question.
Thank you. And Catherine?
No questions at this point.
Thank you. And Steve Carreau?
Yes, thank you. It sounds like sort of two different discussions going on, so I'll address them separately. Number one is I think it's totally easy and fine to use an application and have check boxes on the application for an event, saying that you'd like to apply for whatever the maximum allowable is for, traffic control, as well as the other pot of money that the DDA has budgeted for with the just general event funding. And I think it's a great idea to have that stipulated in the application so that we can keep our accounting straight as to what we're paying out for and from which bucket we're paying for any event. So I think that one's really simple. That's a simple question and pretty easy solution. But I want to say that I'm really uncomfortable with this idea of just winging it with how much money we're giving to different events. I mean, Ron Mitchell just came up with the 5,000 as, for a discussion, and now we're talking about 5,000, but I'm not happy with that. I think that this is a really big deal. And, we have whatever it is, 30,000, I think, between the two pots of money that we've budgeted. And I think this is like an important thing that the DDA needs to get a handle on, is how we are going to determine what events get what amount of money. And I feel like, the fairest way is to have some sort of an algorithm. And this is the first time thinking about it, so I don't have any ideas about that. But I just want to say that I'm not comfortable with just saying, yeah, let's give 5,000 to this group or 7,000 to that group. And I also want to say I really support the Frozen Dead Guy Days. And Amanda, I know, you've worked terribly hard over the years putting this on, and it can't be, it's got to be a really huge project. So it's not discounting any of that. It's just from a fiscal point of view, I think we need to have a algorithm or some set of rules that we follow to determine, what each event will be offered or supported with. So I guess those are my points about it. I'm just not comfortable with winging it and calling out different numbers for different events as they pop up.
Great, thanks, Steve.
May I interject, or are you going around in order for comments?
Oh, you can interject. I have two more to call on, but go ahead.
When I made this proposal, I figured that it would probably be 4 weekends at $5,000 a weekend. This is a weekend where we want to have traffic control. As far as I'm concerned, it's incidental that Frozen Dead Guys is on the same weekend. This is a traffic control budget, totally separate from the event budget. And so in terms of the algorithm, that's what I had in mind. I didn't express it at the time, but I have costed it out. And that's about what it'll take for 2 days of flaggers for approximately 6 hours at the peak periods on those weekends.
Thanks, Ron. Rhea, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, just to clarify, so, and forgive me, but Ron's budget that he came up with for the flaggers, that was approved by the DDA for $20,000, is that right? And that's separate from the grant funding to help support festivals in general? So we have,
Yes. So special
how many
event-
pots of money do we have and how many are in each?
Okay, so for special events, we have $10,000. For parking and flagging that Ron is referencing, we have 20,000. So we total, as Steve referenced, we have total $30,000 to support special events that happen in our community.
Okay, I
think I wanted to follow up with Steve. You said you were not okay with the money. Were you meaning to say that the $5,000 amount was too much or too little, or that we just need to predetermine how much money we're going to give to festivals in general?
Yes, I don't care about the money really, as far as whatever money we're talking about. It's more about having a system in place that the DDA follows for all events, to be fair to all events, and whatever that looks like. So my whole thing is, I think we need to have a set of rules and guidelines that we work off of for funding any events in town, rather than just us coming up with, a random number for each event. And as I was thinking, I just came up with a very, just one possible idea is, like, maybe it could be a certain percentage of the cost of flaggers, the estimated cost of flaggers or whatever else, with a maximum cap per event. And at least there, every different event would get the same percentage of their expenses for flagging with a cap, just because an event like Frozen Dead Guy Days could, easily take over all the money that we have. And we did want to share it among other events. So, I mean, that's one algorithm that I, just as a really off the cuff idea. But then we're using that same algorithm for any event that comes to us, as opposed to just saying, hey, we really, we like this event. It does a lot of good for town. So let's give a lot of money to this one. And that's my point.
Again, I'm saying that we're not allocating the money.
Can I finish?
to this event. I'm sorry.
I just two other quick questions. Is there a precedent for the DDA giving Frozen Dead Guy committing a certain amount of money to Frozen Dead Guy Days in the past? I feel like maybe we've committed some money in the past, but maybe then the festival didn't have been because of COVID. Do we know the answer? Our previous commitments that we've had with Frozen Dead Guy Days, if any. And that's okay if we don't know, because maybe there haven't been. The other thing is, I remember in past discussions, and Amanda bringing this up about how expensive like a parking plan or one of the requirements, and I remember the DDA discussing, let's make a turnkey solution, not for hiring personnel, but for parts of the application process. Like I think it was a parking plan. And so I didn't see that as it being an issue, or I'm kind of curious of where that ended up being. And then in terms of Steve's kind of formula, I mean, that's certainly one way to look at it, a percentage of the expenses event have. But then I'm also curious to know, is there a way to actually monitor how much money the festivals bring into town, as perhaps you could do it as a percentage of sales tax revenue generated over those 3 days, and how much higher it is from baseline. And if, and I don't, maybe that's harder to track, but so that those festivals that make businesses more money in terms of sales tax revenue would get a greater percentage of the funding. I don't know, just a brainstorm in here. So that's all my comments.
Could I just add in one more thing, just about, we could also do some sort of a formula based off of actual expenses that a festival presents after the fact. Like here's an invoice that we paid flaggers, $9,000. And so the festival producer then would know going into it, they're going to get, whatever it is, 25% of the flagging cost will be reimbursed. And as a business person, I could see that that would help me in planning an event, knowing, what amount of money I'm actually going to get back at the end, even though you might not know the exact amount. You would know it's going to be, whatever, 25% of an actual cost. Just one more idea. But I think it's something that's important that the DDA should take up in a separate meeting as far as how we want to address this.
Great, thank you, Steve. Just wanted to check back and see if Danielle had any questions or comments before we kind of go forward. She was the only one that hadn't spoken up.
I'm trying to follow you guys, and you guys are covering it much better than I can, so I'm just gonna try and stay focused on it. So still no questions or comments. I do think Frozen Dead Guys is important, and if we can help them, but you guys are figuring it out better than what I could put my brain onto for it. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Danielle. And I just want to say real quick, I want to open it up for public comment if there's public comment, but I just want to say really quick, we came tonight to discuss the process of the application, not to discuss Frozen Dead Guy Days getting specific money, which is a separate process because no application has been filled out yet. But I could see that coming back to a future board meeting, but we have to keep this specific item is approving the process of, is this grant application okay? And we bring it back to the next meeting. And if this grant application is okay, do we want to modify it in any way? So just to keep it separate because it's two totally separate conversations that are getting intertwined. And then I wanted to open it up for public comment. Are there any public comments? No, hearing or seeing none. Oh, no.
Hello? Kathleen, is it public comment?
Yes.
Okay. I want to say that at the last Board of Trustees meeting, Sarah and Amanda said that there would be no more Frozen Dead Guy Days after this year, and that the only reason they had the money to do it this year is because they got the COVID grant money. So I think it's high time the DDA realize how much money festivals make the community and invest actually way more than 5,000 or whatever we're even talking. The 10,000 investment towards festivals that's separate from what you're talking about, the 20,000. I think that number needs to be increased greatly. And I've been fighting with the fact that the town of Nederland really over the last 10 years that I have been tracking is really putting just so many barricades in front of festivals. And we already did track. I think it's a good idea to track the retail sales tax. And that was done previously, I want to say like 6 years ago. And I think Kevin Mueller, when he was on the Board of Trustees, had those numbers. And it was easy to figure out how much. And there was only 2 significant blips the entire year, every year. And that was $300,000 to $500,000 directly to every business in Nederland, when at the time, I think he said the average gross sales was something like, it was small. It was something like 30,000 on a weekend. In general. So when you're bringing in $500,000, I'm thinking that the DDA should be considering, no kidding, putting $50,000 to $100,000 a year towards festivals and maybe more. And I think that the DDA, that encourages people to throw festivals. I mean, I know we're talking about there might be festivals this year in the future. I don't see how anyone's going to do that. I know Deb might be able to pull off hers this year with the art fair. but I don't think we're not going to see Frozen Dead Guy this year because they'd already be planning, and I haven't heard anything about that. So I mean NedFest. I'm sorry, I misspoke. But yeah. So I on what you're voting on right now, I'm fine with the 20,000, but that might even need to go up if you ask me. If these are going to be the true hard requirements all of a sudden, I find the fees to be astounding and unacceptable, to be quite honest with you. And for the amount of return on these festivals, that's what the DDA needs to be focusing on. That's our mission, I think, is to beautify the downtown area and promote retail sales. And we don't really need to spend time studying it. We can look back at any of the years. And I know the data was already gathered by Kevin Mueller when he was on the board about 6 or 7 years ago, because already festivals were taking a hit, and every single year it turns into this insane saga where I feel like the town of Nederland is just, they don't work hand in hand with anyone. It's more like an abusive, combative relationship, and it's really sad to me. It makes no sense because of how much festivals do for our community. And it's not just money either. It's the people that come to our community and have a good time and love being part of those festivals. Okay? And when you don't have festivals, you don't have those people coming going, oh, I'm going to Ned this weekend. I'm going to Ned this weekend because I want to be part of that. There's nothing to be part of once we kill the festivals off permanently. And, seeing NedFest, losing NedFest because, one person wanted to build stuff in the middle of the ballpark contrary to the comp plans and the master plans is beyond pale. And we lost NedFest. Okay, and Dead Guy just announced at the last BOT that they will not be able to afford to throw the festival next year if things remain the way they are right now. And I'm disturbed that this all went down. And at the same time, we have the farmers market who doesn't pay, for some reason, 5 years to use any public land whatsoever in the central business district, and they don't have to go jump through any of these parking, the porta potties. They use Gershio Field 3 years without paying anything, not a thing. And yet Frozen Dead Guy and NedFest get the ringer through the ringer. So that's the end of my public comment.
Thanks,
Great,
Kathleen.
thank you, Kathleen.
Okay, can I make a motion to approve the application with the addition of a checkbox for traffic or general event support?
Second.
And Kate, will you call the roll?
Steve Carot,
Yes.
Rhea Ortner,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes.
Andrew Duarte,
Sorry, my mute. Yes, that was my mute. Sorry.
Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Catherine Vallon,
Yes.
thank you.
Great, thank you. I think we lost Amanda there, and now that we have the application approved, which was approved, we're just adding a checkbox. We can send it to her.
But was this on discussion or was this on an action?
That was what I was just gonna, yeah. We needed to move that to an action first. So Miranda, how do I do that for now?
I think you would just go ahead and make the motion to an action. And then Kate, you could just know in the record that you did them backwards.
Okay, great, thank you.
So can I get a motion to move that to an action item from a discussion item? Rhea, you are correct there.
Ooh, the subject under discussion to an action item.
Second.
And we'll call the roll again, just so it's official, please.
Yes. Steve Carot,
Yes.
Rhea Ortner,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes.
Andrew Duarte,
Yes.
Ron Mitchell, Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Catherine Vallon.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Now that this is approved, I'd like to just make a suggestion kind of based after hearing Kathleen's comment. Is anyone open to me just chatting just a little bit more about this overall subject of the lack of funding for festivals? Real brief. I just want to propose that maybe we need to have a work session with the Board of Trustees. I do think the Board of Trustees should be involved in some of this. I mean, if festivals bring in sales tax, increased gross revenue for businesses, say at $500,000, doesn't that mean the town of Nederland, their sales tax, if it's 4%, is like $20,000? So, I almost would like to see, and I don't know everything, all the other costs, but we're asking festivals to chip in for policing. But if the town of Ned is also making money on festivals, can't we have them chip in as well? Or are there other unforeseen expenses, we're not doing? It just seems fair to me that because our fundings are directly from commercial property tax revenue, which is true, but this other pot of money, the sales tax revenue that these festivals are generating. And maybe there needs to be some kind of joint workshop or meeting with the Board of Trustees to see if maybe we can work together with the Board of Trustees to come up with some more substantial funding for these festivals that do bring in all this money that Ron and Kathleen have been talking about.
I do think it's Miranda. I think maybe the first step is to actually bring this back as a discussion item again. And let me pull the financial information because I do think it's worth looking at that weekend of Frozen Decade Days also in comparison to the summer. And so looking at sales tax on a larger spectrum. And let's get the DDA should come to the table to the Board of Trustees with suggestions before you launch into a work session. And so that's where I think we start. Is let's dive deeper into those numbers next month.
Yeah, and maybe we can use this pot of money almost like festival incubator, you know what I mean, for new festivals are just starting. And then we can think about perhaps proposing a new pot of money for these larger festivals that bring in tons of money. You know what I mean? Like, I think, the DDA has access to funding. It maybe is not all allocated, but maybe it's just I'd love to talk about this more, this topic in general. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think we can bring
like to see that
financial
discussion next
information.
item.
Yeah, we'll bring the large
That's
special
great.
event application packet. And so, yeah, I think that'll be good. And I'll pull all the documents that everyone needs. And then also can kind of review it from a town staff standpoint, since most of this stuff can be handled administratively. And so there's a better understanding of the way we approach all those different fees.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank
Maria.
you.
Let's definitely bring this back for the February meeting. And now that the application is approved, let's offer it to Amanda to apply for traffic or other festival related expenses. And we can review it at the February meeting as well.
Awesome. I know we lost Amanda for a second there, but thank you guys. This is Olive from Frozen Dead Guy Days. I've been helping them out with applications and permits and that sort of thing.
Thank you, Olive.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to our last discussion item for the evening, which is wayfinding. And Steve Carew, you're up.
Great, thank you. And I'll just scan real quick. I think John Bozio from Merge may still be on the call.
I'm here.
Oh, hey, John, great.
I'm here just to answer any questions. So.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I've seen you on there for a long time. Well, good. Yeah, so I'd like to sort of reassess this discussion item just from some of the feedback I was getting before the meeting. And, I think that it sounds like the board, it would help to have a little bit more back history on the wayfinding project. And what happened was a couple years ago when we thought wayfinding was going to be a really important thing for town, we had gotten an RFP together for wayfinding companies, and we'd put out the RFP, and Merge was one of the three companies that came back with a proposal, and they won the bid. And subsequent to that, we realized that this was going to be a much bigger budget item than we had originally thought. And Merges, the RFP was for basically a full scope of getting us from ground zero to putting signs in the ground. And so what we ended up doing as a board was paring this down and breaking it into several phases. And so I think that's good information, because I know Barbara Hart, who's newer on the board, wasn't aware of that, and many other people on the board now weren't there when we started with the wayfinding. So I just wanted to point out that the contract we had with Merge is pared down. This is like a first third of the project that will take us all the way to building signs and installing them in the ground all over Nederland. And so at this point, we're pretty much at the end of the contract with Merge for this first part of it. And so I just wanted to point that out. And basically what they've done is, helped us with the design and the look and feel of the signs, and put it through a public process and through the DDA board to refine the designs with public comment and stakeholder comment to get us to the point we are now, where we have some pretty nice, rather final sign designs to work with. The other part of the contract was about some preliminary programming, which means what signs do we need in town, and where should they go, and what should they say. So that's kind of what we've been getting back recently from Merge, and that's in the packet. And I realize, especially at this time, 8:30 our time at night, and after a long meeting, I feel like it's probably not a great idea to run through each sign, sign by sign, the way I had laid it out in my packet. But I would love to answer any questions, and John can probably answer questions even better than I could. But before we get to that point, I wanted to kind of guide the discussion to, I think what would be helpful at this point to move the ball forward and understand where the board is on wayfinding, to just reiterate and find out if the board agrees that for our first phase of actually producing signs and installing them, that we should be focusing on the parking vehicular signs and parking ID signs and kiosks. So basically getting people to the public parking places around town, and when they get out of the car, to have kiosks that could guide them to where they want to go in town. And I think we've also, as a board, agreed that we should develop an app that would help. I feel like it would help a lot with guiding people to particular businesses. And that, I guess, guiding the discussion that way and getting board members' feedback would be helpful to see if we're missing any particular categories of signs that we think we should try to include. And the other thing is, I just got a revised budget from John. Maybe it was yesterday, or I think yesterday afternoon. But in general, my feeling from looking through the whole sign programming that John gave us is that we can manage to accomplish a good portion of the parking signage and parking ID and kiosks with staying within the $150,000 budget that we had budgeted for 2022. And then the next phase would be a bit more from there. So I'm not sure if I've covered everything there in my initial, but maybe we could, Barbara, if you don't mind, we could just go around and have people ask questions and If it's something maybe more particular to Nederland, I might be able to answer, and otherwise we could have John chime in.
Can I just ask a quick question about how you put the packet together? Because page 70 location numbers, it says see location number on merges list. I go to the next page, which is a budget spreadsheet. Where are those numbers? I feel like I'm missing a map or something. Like this is very hard for me to decipher or really think about without. Is there something missing? Am I missing something?
I thought it's all in attachments on the thing. Let me just go here.
Should be a map. We provided a
Yeah.
map of all the sign locations.
Yeah, it looks like that didn't get uploaded.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Maybe Kate could, or
But
somebody
yeah,
could email
that's a
that
key.
around
That's
to the board.
Do you want to, John, do you want to share a screen?
That's a critical part of this presentation
Because
for sure. Sorry,
maybe
Rhea.
I can't, since it wasn't provided. I mean, and it is getting late. I can take a brief look at it, but I feel like I'm my limit here of tiredness to really put good thought into it at this point. So I think send about what you have now.
I could share my screen and put it up, and that'll give you sort of an idea.
Great. Sure.
Yeah, and I think my notes, that you had scrolled to there, the notes with the location number. When you see the map, Rhea, and have a little time to look at it with these notes, I think it would make a lot more sense.
Yeah, one of the things I explained to Steve was that, the review of sign locations and messaging and how you direct people is not necessarily sort of this type of meeting. It's more of a sort of a working meeting. But I'll show you just real roughly what we did. Went through it, and Steve described it well. If you think of a wayfinding project sort of in thirds, this first third is, well, let's take an assessment. What are all the different things you could include in this? What are the different sign types? Are there gateways? Are there vehicular signs, parking, pedestrian, business directories, kiosks, all those things. So this first step was to look at that, come up with a very preliminary plan. So by no means is it meant to be a final sign location plan. These are the things we believe we're directing to. Here are the decision points. Here where we think we can put something, and have that preliminary discussion. From that, you can get some quantities. So as we looked at the different places around town and the different sign types, and color coded is really just for what types of signs things are, we were able to put quantities together. So that's what you see in the budget. And as Steve said, we also did design. So at this stage, as we've gone through the process, the thing that we've heard is that parking, pedestrian, kiosk, business directories, that's sort of high on the list. They are lower cost signs, so fitting within the budget made sense. And the order of magnitude says, well, here's a rough number based on what we've done so far, and maybe some additional of how many we think we can include within that budget. And then there's a phase 2, which is vehicular, which is typically more expensive signs. And then we had phase 3 gateways, but we sort of abandoned that for a little bit. So that's what the first phase does, and that's where we've reached, which is, and I think the question from tonight is, do we agree that those are the sign types we should be concentrating on? If they are, then when you go to that second third of the project, that third is to put together the final location plans, really look at the messaging on every single one of them, and put together bid specifications so that you can, on those particular sign types, just those 4 or 5 sign types, so that can go out to a fabricator and you can get bids and it can get constructed and implemented, which is the final third of the project. So I think tonight what we're looking for is just a discussion as to, do we feel like those are the sign types that make the most sense as sort of low-hanging fruit and get within the budget, and we are okay to move forward with that and finalize a document so that you can move to construction.
And just a follow-up question.
It's not something.
And thanks for can you just go back on that slide? Okay, so the blue vehicular sign. So like there's one that's Chipeta Park. So that vehicular sign would be like Chipeta Park this way, or
yes,
shopping plaza. Caribou Shopping Village, number
Right, for the
109,
Paris, right.
type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so Steve's
I
Steve's
think
gone.
this is a great start. I feel like I need more time to digest this whole thing. I think that I think this is super helpful. And by comparing your budget table with these, I mean, I definitely want to take a closer look at this, but I just maybe if it hasn't been already emailed to us, this can be emailed and we can maybe talk about it in more detail next meeting. I just, you know, it's the first time I've seen this right now, so.
Yeah, and Ray, I apologize that I thought that we had the there was a critical part of this from John's email that didn't get posted here. It's probably my fault that I didn't send it over to get into the packet, but I thought I did.
And really,
and
this
I did
grant,
spend several hours on this, you know, to grapple with it. So it's fairly complex.
it is also preliminary, meaning that it's sort of our first pass at it doing, you know, we typically do sort of this text desktop review. Someone like Steve would review it, give it back to us. And then that's in phases when you really sort of nail it down and then also go out into the field and look at specific locations and make those final decisions. So again, preliminary in order to get you a count so that we can go towards that order of magnitude budget. You know, we don't think, you know, if we have 20 signs for a certain sign type, you know, at this point, could it be 22 or 18? Sure, but it's not all of a sudden going to be 50, you know, where it's not going to drop down to 2. And that's why you sort of go through this to get you in a reasonable world to make some educated decisions going forward.
And just one other comment about just public participation. I mean, I know this is obviously a public meeting to talk about this, but Steve, do you think it would be appropriate to have a public meeting specifically dedicated to wayfinding to get the opinions of business owners and residents, area residents that were covering everything? Like, for example, like is a directional to the 10 square ice hockey rink? I mean, pretty darn, the ice hockey rink is pretty hard to find in the middle of winter in the dark.
Yeah,
yeah.
That was all done at the very beginning.
It might be worth it to have.
We did that at the
but not for this phase.
No,
right.
we did it to determine what destination should be included from. Programming
Right.
is never done as a public meeting.
Oh, I see.
It's a technical review with the town and staff, because if you turn it over to the public, it's, you know, you'll have a sign at every corner.
Well, of course, the public can comment on during our meetings, you know, like today or next
Yeah,
month.
but it's a technical document. It's not a
right.
public opinion document.
Okay. Well, I definitely like to, of course, get everybody's input here, including the public's so far, but then I'd like to really table this discussion until next month.
Yeah, and that's fine with me, seeing as how it came together. And I also was quite late, you know, getting to it, which I apologize about that, you know, caused some of these issues. So I'd be happy to even work, you know, between meetings with anybody asking questions and things like that. But one of the things I would like people to comment on is, and I talked to John earlier about this, is for some of the outlying signs like the ice rink and Mud Lake and Caribou Open Space and West Magnolia, there currently are, you know, like U.S. Forest Service signs that direct people to those, and there's good probably county signs going to the Ned Rink and things like that, and Caribou Open Space. So my thought was, you know, and I wanted to hear the board's view, that those were things that are already pretty nice signs that do a good job, and they're far out of the downtown zone. So I was thinking to, you know, just not worry about those for the phase 1 for sure in any case, because I'd rather focus on more of the core of the downtown and get that more unified, and, you know, be able to get rid of some of the signs that will be duplicative, and have it more of a cohesive sign feel. So anyway, yeah, Barbara, if you want to just call on people, maybe we could just go around and have a discussion, get some good feedback, and then we can drill into it more for next meeting.
Great, thanks, Steve. Yeah, how about Andrew?
Yeah, I'm just trying to look at, the map. I think, like Rhea, I need to dive into this. I mean, and as far as general big picture, the phase one being, geared for more parking and um, that sort of thing. I'm definitely in agreement on, um, but need to kind of get these screens up and look at the map and look at the signs and look at the budget. So I don't have a whole lot to add right now. So yeah, that's all I got.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And Ron?
When I looked through the packet, at the bottom, there was a figure of 400,000 and some odd dollars. Is that the actual budget, Steve, that you're thinking of for this project?
No, it was, well, that's going way out. Like, we haven't budgeted any of that, most of that. That's for the, potentially for the full project. But for the phase one that we were thinking for 2022 was more in the 150, we had budgeted 150,000. And that's the one that I feel like we'd be able to maintain, accomplishing all the parking and potentially some business directories and kiosks.
Yeah,
And the
it's a
parking
kiosk
ideas.
for almost what, 78,000 or 87,000? That's a lot of money for a kiosk. I was a little concerned when I saw the price tag on the kiosk.
Well, those are 17,500 installed is our budget figure from Merge.
For one
12,500 plus 5,000 for installation.
So it's 25,000 for one kiosk
So
No, 17,500
total.
installed. That's installed.
and for the
For kiosk.
board members who aren't familiar with us, we do not build signs. So we're not selling you signs. We're just designers and planners. The costs and the budgets that I'm giving you from a unit cost standpoint are based on other projects that and similar scale units, whether it's a kiosk or a vehicular directional sign, or just even just a sign being, a sign panel getting mounted to an existing pole. That's sort of, it's in the world of, similar projects, but we're not these signs in any means. The other thing is with the programming and the counts, it's probably over programmed a little bit, like more quantity that you could cut it back. And Steve and I have talked about that, like he said, with some of the sign types. When we're at this stage of it, it makes more sense for us to over program it and sort of ask it and then delete it if it's not needed and then bring it down. But when we do an order of magnitude, it is that, you shouldn't expect it to be more. It should come down based on the decisions that you make as to what you think is appropriate for your particular town.
So is this, Steve, then a 3-year project with phase one this year and then headed on at 150,000 each year?
I think it could be spread out over more time than that potentially, and probably likely.
What?
I have a real concern about how much of it is outside the boundaries of the DDA and the extent of the budget in terms of bang we're going to get for the buck. How much will our sales increase with this project? That's all I have.
The other thing that client you can look at that let's do is look at grants outside of, from DOT or from other organizations. There's lots of grants that are out there that support wayfinding where you may be able to accomplish, say, the bigger ticket items like the vehicular directional. There are federal as well as state grants that you tap into for that type of thing. So I don't think you have to look at it as a, it's all on you guys to fund bigger ticket stuff.
Great, thank you, John. And Danielle.
From what I gathered, I really liked seeing the difference in the numbers coming down in the presentation. I like that Steve brought up that signs outside of the DDA would not be focused on for phase one. The parking signs and the kiosks, specifically non-digital, and then the focus on an online app. I like that simplicity being laid out. And I like that we're kind of keeping it simple for today's meeting and then bringing it back. But from what I gathered, those few things look a lot better, a lot more easier to wrap my brain around, keeping it simple, looking at very basic signage that would have the most efficiency layout for the beginning of the project. So I appreciate that. And of course, thank you for putting the time into it. This is a really major project, and we haven't put that much time into it ourselves, and I can't fathom what you've been doing with it, Steve. So thank you for your time on that. That's all.
Great, thanks, Danielle. And Steve Roundtree.
Yeah, I'll echo Danielle's comments. Thank you, Steve, for all of the work that's gone into this. I look forward to digging into this with you in the future. And I like the kind of the phased approach and really kind of looking at the signage from a public parking sign standpoint that I think has some more impact and is also maybe some of the lower cost signage and getting that going. But it makes sense to look at everything, the comprehensive plan before just starting and slapping a couple signs up here and there. So I think it's a great approach. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Steve. And Catherine.
Probably echoing a lot of what other people have said. Obviously, a lot of information here. I look forward to digging into it with a fresher brain. I also kind of agree with what Steve alluded to and others as far as phase one, at least focusing on the most kind of critically needed signs within the DDA boundaries. Having said that, you know, if somebody does come out and use the ice rink or go hike Mud Lake or something like that, chances are they're going to work up an appetite or get cold and come into town and eat within the DDA, or, you know, do something to kind of warm up or do whatever. And so maybe as we get into the second and third phases, it will be worth revisiting, still putting legible and attractive signage in some of the areas that might extend beyond the actual boundaries of the DDA, just because it might still create benefit to businesses within the boundaries of the DDA. But obviously, you know, like everybody else, I'm cross-eyed tired, and I'd like to look at this and revisit it when we are fresher.
Great, thank you. I think we can bring it back to the next meeting if that works for Steve, Carew, and John. That would be great to see it. This is just a discussion item tonight. I do want to open it up. Are there any other questions before I open it up to public comment?
Maybe if I could just speak about it too, just as far as wrapping it up a little before public comment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that if we were seeing everything in the packet as one, all of us would be able to run through my comments at least pretty quickly, you know, probably under 30 minutes, anyone could look at the stuff. And so I'll try to get that. I'll even put a little more detail into my notes. And then if we could send that out to the board members after this meeting, I'd be happy to get feedback. And Steve Roundtree's on our committee now. And so we could, and Claudia Schaffler is still on the committee. So that way we could get your feedback and, you know, kind of work with John before the next meeting to try to move this forward. Because it's mostly a question of, where the board stands on the programming and where we are now. And as Ron mentioned, the budget ideas and all. So I think that would help us, and I'll try to move that forward in between the meetings with our committee and all the board members.
And if you do that, Steve, and you get it to us, some time before the next meeting, we can update it so that everybody, whatever you meeting, the comments that you got from the group, we can say that it's been incorporated.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Barbara. And then, yeah, feel free to open it up for public comment.
Great, thank you. Do we have any public comment?
Kathleen Chipai. There's one question that I just haven't found the answer. Initially, when I heard about this, I heard we were in a 3-phase system and that 26,000 had been paid in, and then I heard that 70,000 was the total of the 3 phases. I just want to know, what is the amount of the contract that we have with the sign company? The DDA's contract, what are we committed to spending with this company? Can anybody clarify that for me?
To be clear, we're not a sign company. We don't sell signs.
Okay, right. So
we're the
your
designers.
promotional wayfinding design company, correct?
Design and planning.
Okay, design and planning. Okay, what is the amount of the full contract and what does that get? Can anyone answer that for me?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number. John may know that, but I think it was about 23,500 for phase 1.
Correct.
If I remember right. And
Right.
John could probably Kathleen, answer your question as far as what that encompasses. I have the contract with me, but
So it is 23,000, and what it encompasses, which is the analysis, the preliminary of who gets included, where the sort of overall wayfinding assessment, the preliminary plans, which you're looking at with the messaging, and the schematic design options that have been presented and then sort of worked through to a design development final option. So, and the order of magnitude budget that you see as part of your packet. The intent of this phase was to put all of that together so that decisions could be made as to what components make sense to move forward with the idea that, okay, you do an assessment, you have the design, you have the cost. Do you want to do everything or do you want to do one thing, right? You could do 20 things or you could do 5. So that's where we are with it to make that decision. It seems like, we're close to deciding that it's the parking and the basically pedestrian elements. We would have an additional contract that gets added to this, which is in the budget, that would take our time to put together the bid specifications for those 6 or 7 sign types that are part of this first implementation. And that would be the end of our contract after that. That would then
Okay,
go
so
into a signed contract.
what we're looking at, the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 budget right now, that is a totally separate thing, and what we've already contracted you for is being completed this evening with this sharing of this information?
Correct.
Okay, so you're paid, the DDA will, after this, it will be, everything in this budget is brand new costs.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, because that's
Okay,
because the
that's
budget,
what
because
I
the
was trying to-
majority, yeah, like 90% of what's in that budget is the purchasing of the signs themselves.
Right, and you guys don't make them, so.
Right.
But yeah, okay.
I mean, there are a couple line items.
So you're saying this phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, the total, that would be with signs, and we're working through you to contract those signs? Is that what, am I right or wrong?
They are for the signs, but you're not working through us. The town would then hire the sign contractor separately.
I didn't catch that. You broke up. I'm sorry. So,
Yes.
so if we sign a new contract with you, is it going to be for the amount of these phases?
No.
And will that include the signs, even if it's you not making the signs?
No, the only contract you would sign with us is the one line item that is the development of the bid specifications, which I think is $19,000.
Okay,
That's all.
further.
That's all.
So,
Yeah, further, and that would get you to the bid specs, which would then would be the rest of what you see. And that would be with the signed contractor.
okay. All right. I like everyone else said, I need to wrap my head around reviewing this. And thank you for answering those questions, because that's really what I was waiting for, is to find out those things. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Kathleen, and thank you, John. Do we have any additional questions or comments about wayfinding this evening? Hearing and seeing none. We do have, we're going to hold off on the NedWeb information. We'll bring that next month. It's not time sensitive, so we're gonna skip that this time. We do have reports from committees and chairs. My chair report was very basic and simple. I met with 4 people in person. I met with quite a few others online, and kind of talked about what we've gone through tonight. So that's really all I have. The treasurer's report, Ron, do you want to go through that?
No, I'm happy with what we have in the packet, but I do have a bit for the parking committee.
Okay. Kate, do you want to go over the executive director report?
Mine's also pretty straightforward. I'm just really excited that you all have worked so well with your committees to get us to the point that we're having budget discussions in January and giving ourselves enough time to lift these projects in the spring to make use of the good weather. So that's all I have to say. I'm really excited about your progress.
Great, thank you. And Miranda's report is in the packet as well. And Miranda, did you want to pull out anything specifically?
No, it's in the packet. And I think the only thing is tomorrow is Chris Pelletier's last day. And so if you wanted to send him a little something, we're not doing obviously a farewell, but you could send him an email if you wanted to. He'll have access to his email until about 4 o'clock.
Great, thank you. And do any of the committees want to do a report? We've already heard from quite a few. Ron wanted to talk a little bit about parking.
Yeah, I'll be real quick. It's 9 o'clock. We're way overdue. I met with Nathan Skolak, the engineer, yesterday, and 4 or 5 contractors that were interested in the project. All the engineering's done. It's going out for bid. This was a pre-bid meeting. There may be a couple more contractors, but we are now into the production stage. So we're going to start getting bills pretty soon, but I think we're going to have a completed project probably by the end of the summer. It's looking great. So I'm really pleased to give that report. This is a project that's on the way to fruition.
Great, thank you so much, Ron. Are any of the contractors local?
2 of them were, yes.
Excellent, thank you. Does anyone else have an additional committee report? Hearing and seeing none, did we want to circle back around to the information earlier that Kathleen shared, or do we want to bring that back as a discussion item to the next meeting about the money that was from the Boulder Economic Grant? And maybe if Kate could just give us a tiny bit of information, maybe it would help clarify a little bit where that money comes from, and then we can decide if we want to bring it back.
Sure, I'm happy to. So in the past, this money has been accessed from Boulder County through a grant application that was written by the executive director. And so for this previous year, Hope had written the application, and Visitors Guide or Discover Nederland was included as a potential grant recipient in the application as we went through last month. We discussed those pieces when we were awarding the funding. And so I do believe that Discover Nederland has received grant funds at least the past 2 years that I know off the top of my head. And I do not believe that it pays for the total of the offering, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I can look into it, but as I recall from my conversations with Kay this year, it was just a portion of the cost of the I'm sorry, I'm losing it's hard for me to come up with words at 9 o'clock too, of the publication. So I can look into those items if we want to discuss it a little bit more next month. But this, I will just say that you have funded her previously, and she was written into the grant when you applied for it. We have not applied for this grant for 2022 yet, and because the Boulder County Commissioners have not decided their priorities with these economic development funds. So at this time, we don't have any promises to anyone, no one in line with our future grants, just for your information, that everything was closed out with the year as we had hoped. With your direction, I was able to provide grants to the Discover Nederland and to the Women's Entrepreneur Group, as well as purchase the COVID test for town. Does that hit most of the things you were hoping, Barb? Is there anything else I can answer or
No,
get more information on?
I think that clears it up a lot. I think maybe Kathleen can email with direct information. I think that what we were doing was wrapping up grants that had already been approved a year ago when we applied for this. And we're just trying to, and we just needed to close out the year by paying the rest of that money out. And that's how we ended up paying the money to those specific entities. But I would definitely look forward to reading anything Kathleen has to send, and we can decide if we're going to bring it back as a discussion item for next month. I think because we don't know if we're going to even have access to that grant this year, it may or may not be something we can pursue, but it's definitely worth looking at how we spent that money.
Yeah, Barbara, too, I just wanted to add something because I was involved with this grant earlier the past few years. And, Kate made an important point, I think, in terms of this issue, that that she was included in the grant when we applied for that grant. The past 2 years, I think she's been called out as one of the recipients of that money. And the NDDA really has just taken over managing that grant. It used to be a private individual in Eldora that was getting the grants and managing them, and he thought it was better for the DDA to take that over. So I was part of those meetings when we started managing the grants. But it is true that she was particularly called out in the grant, that some of the funding would go to her. So it wasn't an independent NDDA decision to give her money.
Okay, thank you. That actually does help a little bit because I didn't kind of know how it worked before. And we did make the decisions kind of quickly at the end of the year because we had to use it by the end of the year. So that helps a lot. Does anyone else have any additional questions or comments about that? I don't have any additional questions.
I think it'll be good to see if Kathleen can email everyone that specific, grievances regarding stuff on the application. And obviously I'd like to make sure that, if there is a business directory, it's including all businesses and not being selective, and whether that's an application, that business owners fill out with this, but just what mechanism is there to make sure that it's a complete business directory and not biased. That's all. But I don't have enough information about what went down and who and when. So
Great, thanks, Andrew. If there are no additional questions or comments, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Second.
And Kate.
Steve Crow,
Yes.
Rhea Ortner,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes.
Andrew Duarte,
Yes.
Ron Mitchell,
No.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Catherine Vallon.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
No reaction to my humor.
I was wondering.
What do
I
you
thought
still
Ron
want to
had
talk
another
about?
agenda item.
Well, I was like, he motioned for this.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good
Good
night,
night.
everybody.
Yeah, have a great
You
night.
too. Thanks, everyone.